So I think I could turn it over to you to get us started.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. We're starting off with the February Steering Committee meeting. So I think at this point we will move on to agenda review. Is that correct, John?
Yep, it is. And as I said, we do have a full agenda. We only have one action item, which is to get the minutes into public view. And I see that Vienna has checked in. So thank you, Vienna. And then we have a number of informational items. Some of them are to bring you up to speed on some conversations we've had with legislative staff. Other items are to really bring you up to speed on where we are headed with all of the risks that been identified and how we are mitigating those. I've mentioned this before, and PSC's heard this. We are using our risk and issue management process to really show some of the things that are high priority, that we have to have some mitigation plans on to be able to work through these items as we head into the Cal wind waves. And also, we still have work to do to stabilize production for our 39 former C4 counties and how we're addressing that. So we want to be able to walk through those items. We also have some big milestones that are coming up with LA County, working to cut over to the imaging system as well as Benefits Cal. We know that there's going to be a big conversation on that. We know that there's concern from our former C4 counties about that transition because we have had bumps in the road with our imaging migration. So we want to talk through the preparations. There's been some other communications over the week about addressing some defects and those types of things because imaging is so key to our business. So we're going to hear from our team. We're going to have our partners from Highland as well as Accenture on board to be able to talk through those items. And then we have some of our standard updates and go through. We're going to hear about procurement, those types of things. So you can read through that. But we do have a full agenda. We will be pausing for, of course, PSC comments and questions and public comments and questions as we go. So I think that's a good overview of the agenda, Jesse. And I think we're on to the next item, which is the public comment.
So this is the public opportunity to speak on any item not on the agenda. Public comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes per speaker, except when a speaker is using a translator that they shall be allowed up to 6 minutes. The public may also speak on any item on the agenda by waiting until the item is read and requesting recognition from the co-chair to speak. Please note that all lines are muted when the meeting begins, so you can unmute by clicking the microphone icon on your Zoom app or when you're on the phone, pressing *6. Are there any comments? Hearing none, and I'm also checking the chat, not seeing any requests to be recognized. We can move on to the next item, which is the approval of the minutes from the December 16th meeting.
Thank you, Jesse. For those of you that have your minutes handy, we have a number of action items that were left over from our December meeting. So let me take a look at those real quick. So first one, providing an update on CalSAW's recruitment. Holly, can you give a quick update, or are you going to do that during the fiscal update?
I can just give a quick update right now. We do not have any currently open recruitments, but we are planning for a couple more coming up. We've got some additional staff in our staff loading plan for implementation coordinators. We have a training coordinator, and we do have a backfill need for a business analyst. So watch for upcoming CITs associated with that.
And PSC members, we did make an important hire. You may have heard about it for our consortium benefits Cal manager, Joel Acevedo, longtime consortium employee, has been given that position. I know that Joel is excited to get started, so you're going to start hearing Joel on these meetings and other meetings as we roll forward. Okay. Next one, item 2, Luz, any quick updates on analytics, or else do we want to defer that to further on when we're talking about sort of our strategy for ad hoc reporting and support of the counties?
I can do a quick update as to where we are in the delivery of some of the re-platform activities. So we are actually at the end of our overall re-platforming that we were doing. We had our hard launch on February 3rd of release I, which is the second to the last one. And our last release, release J, is actually in soft launch right now. So we're very close to the end of what we originally discussed in an overall re-platform. And we'll talk more about ad hoc as we move further on the agenda.
Thank you, Luz. Item 3 is just an ongoing item on our DEI, or as Cal Saws, we call it our IDEA initiatives. We give a pretty good update. Casey Morris provided a really nice update in Karuthi at the membership meeting. So we'll keep scheduling that as our activities progress over year 2022. The next few items are closed, so I won't go over those items. Action item 7, provide statistics for each application stream through Benefits Cal. Rachel?
Yeah, John, wanted to provide an update, and this is something that we are going to be sharing as we produce our monthly customer experience report going forward, starting with our February report. But what we have pulled together is for the quarter 4 comparison for CalFresh applications. Just wanted to give a little bit of a breakdown. So this is everything that would have been in Benefits Cal. We had 100,625 applications that came in from Get CalFresh, which are CalFresh only apps. We had 46,031 customer applications that had come in for CalFresh, and 10,137 that were submitted by community-based organizations. And then for CalWorks, we split it down by program. For CalWorks, we did have 24,031 applications that were submitted by customers and 169 CalWorks applications that had been submitted by community-based organizations. And then for Medi-Cal, we had 30,000 applications that had requested Medi-Cal, 30,018, and community-based organizations had submitted requests for Medi-Cal for 2,935 individuals. But we will be putting these numbers as we move forward into, as I had mentioned, in our customer experience monthly report that gets published at the beginning of every month for the preceding month.
And I think we could also make sure that they become part of the PSC packet too. We won't review them every time, but we'll make sure that they're part of the PSC packet.
We can, yes, John, definitely.
Great, thanks, Rachel. Item 8, sort of a follow-up on what we were talking about, the postage items. So Lisa?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So correspondence continues to be a focus. We are working through a number of items, whether it be enhancements or resolving issues that come through tickets. In the coming months, we do have a number of site visits with the counties where we will be having a deeper dive on this topic. I'm working with the regional managers to make sure we have content and input from the counties as we go forward to those meetings. This action item was specific to, I think, 1 meeting ago, sorry, I apologize. There was a question around one particular form, a CalWorks exemption form. We did review the original design, and the current behavior is in line with that form. That being said, there are 2 changes to that form. One, it is being updated with our March release as we implement the revised CalWorks time clock related changes and changes to 24-48 month. And then there's a subsequent change for the population. As we work through that subsequent change in population of the form, we have temporarily stopped the automation. The form is available for counties to generate through the template repository. So we definitely continue to work that item, which I think was a specific request. I have talked with Bobby, the Region 3 regional manager, and in communication with the county, and a CIT is coming out, I believe, next week with those updates. That's
Thank
it,
you,
John.
Lisa. Very good. And then 9 and 10, Rachel?
Yep, on 9, refreshing folks' memories, the county communication plan, this was specific to Kelvin ISS, and there was a request about if or how will the community-based organizations be included in the county communication plan. That plan is a plan that is provided from the project to the counties as informational that the counties then could use, but the county's specific communications with the CBOs remains a county effort. It is not specifically designated in terms of communication in the county communication plan. That is how the project and the counties are going to be communicating with one another throughout the project. And then on 10, the request last month was about if we could go back and look at demographic data by different populations in a monthly report. We have gone back looking at our usage analytics tool. We are looking at including this monthly report starting at the end of February to break down the demographic data. We're going to be working through to make sure that the demographic, I'll call it views that we're creating across language and age and other parameters are going to be hitting the mark in terms of what is being needed. But we're going to start out in February with some targeted demographic data, and then we can always add to it as we continue evolve the reporting and understand how the adoption looks in Benefits Cal. But it is coming at the end of February. And again, that same CX report, and John, to your note earlier, we can include it in the PSC packet for our next meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesse, with that was a review of the action items. We'll close out many of those action items and again, document others that come out from the meeting. So this is open for comments or questions or a motion from the PSC.
Thank you, John. Are there any comments or questions from PSC?
Albert in San Diego, no comments, and I move to approve the minutes.
This is Ethan, I second.
Thank you. Okay, with that, John, I think we're ready to move on to item number 5.
I got to go through, Jesse, a roll
sorry.
call of
Roll
the
call.
PSC members, and we probably need to see if there's any public comment.
Oh, Paula, thank you for reminding me.
No problem.
Are there any comments from the public on this item? Okay, hearing none.
All right, I'll go through the roll call, Jesse. So Clarissa, you approve?
I approve.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Vienna?
Yes.
Very good. Rachel, do you approve?
Yes.
Very good. Cindy?
I approve.
Excellent. James?
I approve.
Very good. Sandra, do you want to just approve it into the minutes?
I approve.
Very good. Winna? Winna, are you there?
Coming off mute, I approve.
Very good. Luther?
I approve.
Very good. Nympha, I don't know if you're on yet.
Hi, yes, I approve.
Very good. Thank you. And thanks for joining. All right, that brings us to our informational items. Let's go to the next slide, please. Earlier this month, our state partners set up a legislative staff briefing that has happened for the last several years. That happens early on in the budget legislative session. So we can give our legislative staff members an update on CalSAWS, our commitments that we made last year, where we're at on migration. So those things could be taken into consideration as a number of bills and things like that are looked at for the coming year. So again, that took place earlier this month. OSI coordinated that. Our partners from CDSS, DHCS, as well as OSI were on board and coordinated that. Myself and Christiana Smith took the lead to do the presentation on CalSAWS, but it was definitely a group effort for putting together this slide deck. The meeting was about an hour long. Our advocate partners were also invited to be observers and also at some point participate in the meeting. So the overall meeting went well. Christian and I wanted to quickly click through the slides that we reviewed with our legislative staff, not going through all of these items, but just to give you an idea of the information and to provide that for reference. As you can see, there was probably there were some new legislative staff, so we wanted to ground everybody in what is CalSAWS, what is our journey to CalSAWS that we have all been on together. So this slide sort of summarizes that. Let's go to the next slide. We wanted to talk about moving from 3 systems to 2, the success on the cutover of the C4 counties that took place in September of 2021, that counties resumed business in September 27th, where all 4 counties were on, and that transaction volumes, just that snapshot of transactions in the systems, were pretty close to pre-cutover, but that didn't mean that we didn't have areas of focus. Let's go on to the next slide. Our areas of focus, we talked, and I'd say this is probably one of our longer areas that we talked about, was imaging performance. And what our bit of a rough start was that we brought about performance stability. We also talked about the 2 deletion events and the restoration of those documents. There was questions from our legislative staff, as well as our advocate partners, about impacts to customers. And so we talked through those items and talked about the continuing stabilization of that. And that is the reason that we did put off the LA implementation of the imaging system that was scheduled for November and move that tentatively to March 14th, middle March, April, depending on the outcomes of that performance. So that was a longer discussion. And we talked about the enhanced sort of support that we're providing for the C4 counties. And we're making updates to begin to assist in the normalization and optimization as they transition on the new systems, and some additional engagement with the counties to support some questions, some areas on correspondence and reporting questions that we still have some focus areas to be able to do that. So that was the overview of that, and we spent some time discussing that. Next slide. This was just sort of success by the numbers. You guys, the PSC has seen these, just those snapshot items on transaction volumes, and that these are in line with the pre-migration items, and just a few numbers, a few facts from the core CalSAWS perspective. Next slide. One of the items that we always want to ground our legislative staff in is what are the programs that are supported by CalSAWS? By far, Medi-Cal being just under 4 million is our largest program. And how does CalFresh and CalWorks break down? We didn't add into this, we just did a general chart. We didn't have the GAGR on that. I think that was one of the questions, and of course we can provide those statistics, and they're in our reporting. Okay, next slide. Then we went into our Benefits Cal implementation. What is Benefits Cal? Talked about our prior See for Yourself, LA County being on Your Benefits Now, and My BCW, and the move, and the important move to a single customer portal, and calling that Benefits Cal. So getting our legislative staff grounded in that and looking at that, and some high level functionality that's there. Let's go to the next slide. We started looking at some of the statistics that Rachel discussed, online application comparison by program, and how that compares to years 18, 19, 20, and 21 across programs and totals. And then we have some items on there as we look at how the pandemic impacted application counts as we went through, and that online Medi-Cal applications decreased by almost 33,000 over 2020, and that was likely due to people staying on coverage, not being discontinued during the public health emergency. So we wanted to let people know of what is Benefits Cal, how's things coming in there, and the comparison for just the 39 counties. Next slide. Then we looked at online CalFresh applications. I think one of these action items, I think, emanated from PSC was what is the percentage of applications coming through Get CalFresh, customers, and CBOs? So we looked from 2018, 19, 2020, and 2021, the application counts and the mix of where they're coming in from. Next slide. And then again, Cal saw Benefits Cal by the numbers and sort of pointed these out. Of course, these are numbers that we've went over with PSC on a number of occasions. We focused on the access from a mobile device and our mobile first strategy. That 75% are taking less than an hour and sort of working through those. So we spent a little time on that. Then we went to implementation successes and learning with Benefits Cal. I think it was a pretty smooth transition. We've received positive feedback and some of the statistics that I pointed out on the earlier slide, and sort of working that. Any issues that we found, we turned those things around very quickly. And the integration with Get CalFresh has successfully submitted over 100,000 applications. I think what we learned, and as we're heading into LA and the CalWin waves, that it's easier for customers to create a brand new account when they get brought over to Benefits Cal than it is to convert their account and have people remember their credentials. And then the increased usage, as people are increasing that, we're getting word out on Benefits Cal, and that publicity and awareness is coming up. That that really has the counties in that role of having to provide that additional customer support with the counties and work early and often with the advocates and state partners. We know that we had a bow wave of activities right before the September 27th go live. We're really having to check, recheck, tweak, change, add to the functionality in order to really get everybody to stack hands on that launch on September 27th. And now we're trying to normalize those interactions so it isn't such a rush at the very end. And that's going to be happening through our collaboration model and working through that. And then on the horizon, we have upcoming releases to increase functionality. It isn't like Benefits Cal's done. It is going to be a living, breathing, changing, evolving platform that needs to be adjusted with policy, with additional features that we can use. And then working with state partners on very important requests that we've heard. Release for information. You're going to hear about that later. I won't steal anybody's thunder, but I think we're going to be surprised about, not surprised, we're going to be pleased about upcoming opportunities to get that into the system, and expanding CBO dashboards details for reporting and those things. And then we talked about the move for LA County. Currently targeted for March for imaging implementation. The dates for the various items. Sorry, I'm getting text from folks. And then just sort of working through our testing windows that we'll go through a little bit later. Let's go to the next one. And then we talked about CalWin migration and the waves, the release schedule, and what we're doing, grounded them in what is development testing, our mock conversions, and each one of our waves. Next slide. We wanted our legislative staff to understand our waves and the dates of those waves and those types of things in the counties that are in those waves. So we gave a quick overview of that. Next slide. Then we went into existing policy commitments, and Christiana I'll turn it to you.
Thanks, John. So we just kind of went over reminders for folks of all of the things that are already in the queue, which you can see in miniature and color coded here and on the next slide. We can go to that as well. Just showing that, you know, we've got quite a few things already planned between now and about mid 2024. And if we can go to the next slide. And the next, there we go. So we know this is always one of the key questions for legislative staff is, you know, when can we get something done? When can we get it in? And we knew, as John mentioned earlier, that there were some new legislative staff. So we wanted to make sure that we went over, you know, kind of what the normal timeline is and the normal process to get a change in, as well as the fact that right now with the Kelvin migration waves coming up so soon, we really have a limited ability to put additional changes in during that time. And just kind of walked through the timelines and the process for that. If we can go to the next slide. Our big takeaway here in terms of this is that with all of those existing policy commitments that you saw a couple slides ago, as well as, of course, the Kelvin migration happening, that we're anticipating that the next space for new big policy changes is going to be mid 2024. And with that, we proceeded to questions. So I don't know if we have the appendices in here. I apologize. I'm not sure if they're there. Actually, if we go back one slide, just to kind of let folks know, this may be a handy reference for you. We did include some information that we didn't go through in the presentation about the various emergency response activities that have occurred due to the public health emergency, as well as the wildfires, and then more recently with the EBT scams. Also provided a summary of the policies that went in during 2020 and 2021, as well as another view in a different format from what you saw a couple slides ago of the policy commitments that are currently in the queue. So John, I will turn it back over to you. I think we just about got it in 10 minutes.
Very good. So we wanted to include all of these in the deck. I think this might be a useful deck for you as you're working with your boards or other executives, and reuse that if you have some CalSAWS items that you want to do. So Jesse, that concludes that agenda item, and it's open for questions or comments.
Thank you so much, John and Christiana. And I think that appendix is such a great resource and just reminder of how much has been achieved in this very crucial time between fire and pandemic and all sorts of other things that are disasters. Any comments from our project steering committee? Comments or questions?
Hi, I have a question. This is Sandra Bolin. For the upcoming releases with added functionality, what type of support is going to be provided to the different counties as far as demos or regarding the releases or just walkthroughs for any new functionality?
Hey, Sandra, that's a really good question. We're going to have an application development update a little bit later in the agenda. And as Lisa and possibly Karen are sort of going through those activities, we could ask them to focus on some of the support activities for counties on those upcoming changes and releases. And if they don't address it during their presentation, then let's loop back around on that agenda item and continue the conversation on that agenda item, if that's okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Do we have any comments from the public? Okay, hearing none, John, we can move on to the next item.
Very good. This is a follow-up item. I know that what is the support model and the strategy for counties transitioning to CalSAWS reports from state reports, management reports, ad hoc reports? We know that that was very much and continues to be an area of interest for 39 counties. It's always been an interest for Los Angeles County. And the Kelvin counties really want to start getting prepared for this. So we wanted the team to come in and start talking about the strategy and what it is. So I'll turn that over as the opening.
All right, well, thank you, John. My name is Keith Solis, met many of you, but with respect to this slide here, I'm going to talk to you from analytics reports and support perspective. To John's point, we have been hearing from the Cowan counties, and we have been working with the Cowan counties on some of the concerns that they have and the needs that they have. And so I'm going to walk through some of the things that we've outlined in our timeline here. Keep in mind, this timeline is specific to wave 1, and we are putting together communications and timelines for the remaining waves 2 through 6 respectively. But recognizing that the CalWin conversion is more of a traditional conversion, more traditional than the conversion that we had for C4, because the C4 conversion there was about an 80% likeness on the data model. CalWin is a different type of an animal. We've always said this, and it does require a more deeper level of support. So some of the things that we're thinking about here is starting off education. One thing we want to be able to do for the ad hoc counties is make sure that they're aware of the reports that are currently available in the system. And the rationale behind that is there may be reports that are available in the system, and they're planning to refactor a report that's at the county level. They may not need to do that if they recognize that report is already available to them in the system. And so we want to make sure that they have that type of information. So we will be going over a number of reports. In the system today, there are over 500 reports and dashboards, but we will be strategic in terms of how we communicate this to the counties. And we'll be doing this by going over state reports, management reports, and dashboards, looking at it from an operational perspective and looking at the state level. So a lot of reports that we'll need to go through. And in doing this, we have started to establish meetings with the counties, and the initial ones that we've set up or created were called discovery sessions. And really, it started to open up a dialogue. It let us understand what some of their concerns were, and then the next steps will be going over some of these reports. So that for this one, for wave 1, these are topics that we're targeting to start in. We've already started some of it, like as I mentioned with the discovery sessions, but around the end of February and the beginning of March is where we'll start to get into some of the deeper dives with regards to the overviews of the reports themselves. On onboarding, that really is intended to be providing the counties access to data. And access to data could mean a lot of things, but really what we want to be able to do is make sure that the counties understand, the ad hoc counties understand the CalSAWS data structures, the tables and columns that they will be essentially converting to. And respectively data. There may be data that they can use that can help them with either their testing or just confirmation of the reports respectively. So we want to make sure that we can provide that to them. What we are targeting here for the wave 1 counties and respectively for all the counties is number 1, we can already provide them the tables and columns. It's a schema. For the wave 1 counties, we have exported that to them. For the remaining counties, we can certainly do that on a regular cadence. And by April, our intent is, and our plan is to have all data available, or have the data available to them. And so we're working on just what data sets we can make available to the counties respectively. And that would, our target right now was, given the constraints that we had, we were looking at, they wouldn't really get access to the environments until about 5 months before go live. If we're able to provide them this data by April, we're a little bit ahead of that curve, still recognizing the counties need time to do their refactoring. So we're doing everything we can to get that data to them as soon as possible. On the refactoring, that might be deemed a little bit more educational. What we want to be able to do is make sure that the counties have access to the CalSAWS data dictionary. Simply put, that's just a definition of each of the tables and the columns in the data model. What we think is also, and maybe a little bit more equally important, is the CalWin conversion mapping reports. And that I'm responsible for a conversion team. Paul Trisler and I are responsible for that team. And what we have is the mapping of CalWin source data to CalSAWS target data. And we think this will be beneficial to the counties because it'll allow them to understand how did we convert that data. And so when they're looking at a similar element, they'd be able to do the same. We'll provide them some examples. We'll do a day in the life. We'll pull some reports or ask them to pull some reports that they have, identify a column, and then we'll walk them through that. So we want to make sure we're certainly providing them levels of support. And then lastly here on the support, and this may be looked at as more of some development support on request and more likely as a part of a county purchase where they absolutely need support. We want to make sure that we can provide them support from a development perspective, because in some cases they just may not have the needs to refactor the reports that they have, and we may be able to help them. So I said a lot there. I will pause to see if there are any questions, but this was our intent to provide the Calvin counties much more, I'll call it enhanced support with regards to this timeline.
Thank you so much, Keith. I have a question, but I also see that Albert has his hand up.
Okay.
Good afternoon. This is Albert in San Diego. And I think that speaking for San Diego and maybe some of the other Calvin counties, I think the concern is not the CalSAWS reports to get data for our as it relates to case them and things of that nature. I think is the access to the data, because currently we use CIS to feed either other systems that we use, or we pull specific reports for our partners that we have that have MOUs with the county. So I think that's the concern, is being able to have access to data, not particular a report, so that we don't throw a wrench in our operations when we cut over. So I'm glad to hear that the access to tables and teaching the staff is coming sooner than later. But I just want to make sure that the focus is the right place. It's not about CalSAWS reports. It's all the ad hoc reports that feed either other systems that we may not be ready to go to use core at go live, or data that we create specifically for business, for our community partners that have MOUs with us. So thank you.
That's a good point. I appreciate you bringing that up. I should have prefaced this is not just reports. When we say access to data, and here we're calling it the schema, but that really is the table and columns, and then as well as the conversion data mapping reports, that really supports not just the reports, but also peripheral systems, because you're really doing a refactoring. It is a conversion, and so. Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that. We do have a risk. I believe we'll be talking risks a little bit later, but we do have a risk, and the risk does talk to that. It's reports and peripheral systems. So,
Are there any other questions or comments from PSC? Keith, I had a question about, if we can go back to that slide. I heard you mention this was primarily focused on the wave 1 counties. Is there anything that because the consecutive waves are going to happen very quickly. So is there anything that the consecutive waves need to think about, especially as they come to the decision point of the refactoring support, which says on request? There would be some counties who may need to begin contemplating that decision as they look at the slide, even if they're at the later waves.
This approach we'll do the same approach for each of the respective waves. And for each of the respective waves, our plan is that essentially 12 months before the go live, we would have had that discovery session with them. And then from there, we start to create the curriculum and timeline to get through a lot of the things I just mentioned here. So as I noted, the timelines on here are specific to wave 1, but the approach will be the same for each of the respective waves, starting with discovery about 12 months before they go live.
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
And Jesse, this is John. Keith pointed this out, but I wanted to make sure it's really clear. From the education to the onboarding, and then looking at making counties self-sufficient as they look and identify their refactoring that they have to do. And if that isn't enough and there's enhanced support that's needed, that would be a county purchase, because it isn't directly in scope but we want to be able to have that available to the county should they need that. But I think that's an important point. We want to make the county self-sufficient to be able to do this on your own. And if you're not, we can do that, but it isn't within scope, and there would be that county purchase that would be necessary.
Yes, that's precisely the reason why I wanted to call that out, because anything that has to do with a purchase adds several more months for the counties for us to go through our boards. So kind of coming to the awareness of this need is very important for the counties as they engage in this work. I did not see anything in the chat or anything else from PSC. Okay. Do we have any public comment on this item? Okay, hearing none. Move on to the next item.
Great, thank you. Hi, this is Greg Elston. I will get us started on our risk discussion here and update. As John had mentioned earlier, right, we're bringing an update on the risk from a transparency perspective. We want to ensure that everyone is aware of the critical risk that we see as a project, and the path that we are taking to mitigate these risks, and ultimately address them, provide contingencies, or whatever the case may be. So I also realize as we look at these slides is there are a lot of words on these slides, and it's probably difficult to read them all. So I apologize for the eye chart, but wanted to at least be able to talk through these risks and provide some background. And certainly you have the material available for reading later as well. So the risk here that you'll see on this first page, actually, you may recall that we were tracking these same risks for our C4 cutover. And as we mitigated those for C4, we may have downgraded the risk severity from a high to a medium, and for the C4 implementation. And now that we're past the C4 implementation, we know these same risks are important to us for the CalWIN cutover, and to ensure that we have success there across all the waves. So in several cases, actually everything on this slide here, you'll see that we have upgraded these back to high. And that is deliberate, so that we are paying very close attention to these from a program perspective. And we actually review these every week as part of our risk management process. So just a little bit of context there. The first two risks that are on the slide are related to performance. 236 is related to our analytics and dashboards and reports, and 237 is related to the batch. So we are working, our two teams are working very closely together from an analytics and batch perspective, and really operating as one team. However, we still have the separate risks. We are making some good progress on this front. We do have, we've implemented or put together a roadmap for the changes that we're going to be implementing over time as we get ready for the CalWIN waves and their implementation schedule. Based on the first set of changes that we've identified, we actually are projecting that we will reduce our batch window by about an hour and a half. So that's very good news. That's going to allow us additional time so that we can also scale the system to meet the processing needs. But specific things that we've done related to that, we've implemented or upgraded our database. So we're now on Oracle 19C. And just by taking in that database, we're seeing some improvement because of the technology that's implemented there. However, we have other changes that are coming. We're making some changes to some of the core processing where we can actually move it to event streaming and remove it from our batch altogether. We've got some other changes that are related to where we do some of our packaging of data. So we can do some pre-packaging there and get that out, and we're able to send our files over to central print faster with those changes. And then we've got some changes related to our ABOD process where we actually believe we can remove that completely from the batch. So we will be implementing some of these over the next 60 to 90 days. We actually are planning to implement some of these changes at the end of February, and we will go through April. So once we get through that, we will be going into our official performance test for Wave 1. We are planning to do performance testing from May through July. So we've expanded our window that we're doing testing longer than we had for C4. And once we get through Wave 1, that'll be for the 43 county data set. we will go through another set of performance testing where we will increase our data set to 46 counties basically, or through 45 counties for wave 2. And we will complete that testing this fall. And once we get through that, we will ramp up to a full 58 county data set so that we can test ahead of all the remaining waves. So both the reports and analytics and dashboards will be tested in conjunction with the batch so that we can see the full picture there. So good progress. Again, we are still tracking this as a high impact to us because it is important. But good news is we've already seen or have projected some significant savings in our batch. Risk 256 is related specifically around imaging and the performance there. John had actually talked about that. That was an area that they spent quite a bit of time with the legislature talking about updates on imaging. Arnold Malvik will be providing an update and he can provide more details. However, we have been going through an additional round of enhanced performance testing ahead of the LA cutover. And looks like we've got some very encouraging news there. We have run through performance testing with full county load, so full 58 data set. And the application is meeting the SLA. So that's both from a Highland imaging perspective, the CalSAWS core application, as well as the Benefits Cal. All of those are being tested together. So good progress there. And again, while I sold some of his thunder, I will let Arnold speak more to that. And then risk 258, which is the last one on the page, is related to the conversion cutover window. Like with C4, we are projecting an 84-hour cutover window for each of the CalWin waves as we move forward. If you recall, we were tracking this risk for C4, and we actually got our performance less than 84 hours, which was very helpful to us during the cutover window. We anticipate being able to do the same thing here. However, we are tracking this risk because we know we've got 6 different waves ahead of us that we will have to be managing our transition. So right now, the team is currently focused on building out the details behind the cutover schedule. And very soon, we will start to run our first mock conversion for wave 1. And coming out of that will give us a better idea of where we need to continue to tweak the conversion process that fit within the 84-hour window. So right now, I think we're in pretty good shape there, but we've got to get through that first mock conversion before we can declare success on that.
Hey, Greg, while you're on that and you're talking through that item, I know that I had a question earlier that I know the team's addressed, but I think others might have the same question. When we're looking at an 84-hour window, and that was the same 84-hour window that we had when we transitioned 39 counties at the same time, and now we have an 84-hour window, and like wave 1, we're doing 3 counties. Why do we have the window the same? Wouldn't it be smaller because there's less data? And I know you've answered that for me, but maybe that might be a question that our PSC members might have as they're looking at this risk.
It is a very good question. I would invite Keith to weigh in on that as well. We do know that our process for CalWin conversion is going to be different than it was for C4, right? We're not coming from the same data model. It's a very different data model that we'll be processing. So that effort and the amount of processing time is going to be a little bit longer, which is why, even though we have fewer counties, we are going to see, still a significant amount of time there. However, Keith, please weigh in as the expert here.
You're absolutely correct. So the processes and activities will be very much the same. So there are activities that are not just conversion. In the C4 conversion, the conversion transformation was relatively small with regards to the window. But there are a lot of other activities, other project and other team dependencies, extracting the data, moving the data on up to an environment where we can start the transformation. Once we're done, then you do have a lot of DBA activities. Now, the difference between C4 conversion and CalWin conversion are night and day. We did a data transformation in place, which was really a copy over. And instead for CalWin, we're doing a more traditional transformation. So we will have to process through every single record that we're going through versus just take the data and bring it over into another database. So the transformation alone will be a significant effort for us on Kelvin. So Greg, you were right. It's the processing of the data.
Thanks, Keith. So if we go to the next slide, we are continuing with our high-level risk here. And speaking of conversion, we have risk 263. This is a new risk that we have logged post C4. So we did talk about it last month during our all-member JPA meeting, but it's around our converted data test. So as we've gone through the first round of conversion, we are also have a phase in the project where we are testing that converted data and ensuring that it does work within the application. So as we've gone through that process, we have identified, more defects than we expected. So as a result, we've created this risk and we are tracking this one very closely. Right now we have made some changes to our plan. So one, we have some schedule contingency there that we were able to leverage. So we've added in some additional time for our converted data testing. So it gives us more time to resolve the issues. The team has allocated those high priority defects, so the severity 1s and 2s that have been identified as part of the testing, have been ruled into our next data set or targeted for our next data set, which is going to be Golden Data Set 6 that will be delivered at the end of March. So we will then have time within April to test and validate that, make additional hotfix type of corrections as needed, and it will position us to provide that data to user acceptance testing. So they'll be able to do their preparation activities in the May-June timeframe in advance of UAT. So that's helpful. The other thing that we've done is while we were working on this, addressing these defects, we've actually leveraged additional resources, but we've pulled over some of our testing resources that have been engaged in converted data test, and we're embedding them basically with the conversion team. So they're actually retesting the defects in our assembly test environment before we do the full packaging and moving it over. And why that is so important is it really helps to increase our fix reliability so that we know that when we've corrected that defect, we can validate it, much sooner than before it actually gets up into our conversion environment. So that's very important to us. So yeah, we are making some progress here. We still have some work to do. However, we are tracking this risk. And like I said, we're also taking a look at additional contingency things that we can do. So, if we do have some defects that once we get into UAT that are causing a problem, how are we going to be able to fix that real time and kind of do a hot fix that gets it into the UAT environment so that we can successfully test everything there. So those activities are underway as we're working to mitigate this risk. Risk 268. So this one, and maybe I should have moved this to the end of our high risk, but risk 268 is actually kind of a risk to track a lot of these other high priority risks. So, as we look at, for instance, performance or the imaging performance or conversion and converted data test, right? Those are standalone risks that we're working towards and managing. What we've done with 268 is kind of create a risk, an umbrella risk that we can track all these there. And really our focus here is it allows us to take kind of that big picture view of all those key risks that we're tracking and evaluate them as a whole as opposed to independently, because we think it's important to be able to look at the full picture of risk that we're managing as we make decisions on the project and how we move forward. So that's our plan with this risk. We have identified, and it shows here on the status, right? We're putting in individual mitigation steps for each of the individual risks. And we're also taking a look at, what would be contingency planning that we need to have in place around, all these risks. So if we're unable to, get to the point where we feel like our performance is where it needs to be, what do we need to do? And what would be that trigger date for that risk turning into an issue? So a lot of focus is going on there. And I don't know if she's on, but I will ask Wendy Batterman. Wendy, if you had any updates or any additional points you wanted to add on this risk. And she may not be on or unmute. So so we can move on. Our next risk is actually risk 269.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Wendy, we can hear you now.
Hi, sorry, I'm calling in today. So yeah, nothing more to add. I think, we're just really, working on those contingencies, and we'll be bringing back more information. So I think you covered it pretty well, Greg. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mindy. And risk 269, I'm going to let Rachel Fry. She is going to provide an update on this particular risk, as well as some of the others.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And Keith, I'll say, teed this one up for you and I pretty nicely here. As Keith had talked about, one of the things that we're tracking from a risk perspective is to make sure that the counties are having enough time to be able to refactor the reports that they need to have ready for things like Albert had mentioned to support in their counties. So Keith had talked about what that strategy is going to look like in terms of making sure that there is an awareness and education with the counties as a starting point, so that there is an awareness of what the data models look like and the data structures look like before we even venture into having conversations about what is the refactoring effort or what is refactoring that's required. So that upfront education is part of the strategy to make sure that we're giving the counties sufficient knowledge and awareness so that they can understand what needs to be done. Onboarding onto the counties is as Keith had talked about. And then Jesse, I did take a note down as we talked about, there was a ability for potential support for refactoring for the counties. I did take a note down that we're going to add that also to our tracking sheet so that we can engage in those conversations early with the counties, recognizing that there could be budgetary or staffing implications if the counties need some additional refactoring support beyond what they're able to accommodate in-house. So that's where the risk 269 stands. If we could move to 262, and this one's mine as well. 262 is tracking a risk about making sure, as a holistic view, if the counties are really prepared and ready for go live in October. And there are a number of things that right now the team is doing to address making sure that there is a readiness, that there is the information that the counties are needing in order to go live in October. And so I wanted to walk through a couple of updates on these. We have added in a county-specific work plan for implementation. That was not something that had originally been planned for each county to get their own work plan, but based off of conversations that we've been having with the counties to want to understand the dependencies specific to their county, where those all fit in alignment with the project, we have created individual work plans for the counties that reflect where their specific implementation is along that continuum to get to October. And for the rest of the counties, they will be getting it at T-12. Wave 1 already has it. Wave 2 is going to be getting it this month, but the rest of them would be getting it at T-12. There is also a checklist that is going out to the counties as well. Wave 1 does have that. The rest of the counties will be getting it at T-10. And that readiness checklist is specifically aimed at understanding if we are ready for go live. It is not intended to track the activities that are early on in the efforts. It is really to make sure that all of the items that need to be in position for the county to go live are included in that checklist. So that's available at T-10. Which also is, there's a technical readiness checklist that's included in it as well, that we have included for T-10, that is that for the counties is available for all of the technical thread related work also. At T-6 is when we are going to be bringing together the county related activities and the project related activities into a common dashboard view, so that there is the holistic view for everyone to track where we are relative to the project and where we are relative to the counties. During that period of time between now and T-6, we are tracking all of that internally, and we're going to be putting that, making that available in the dashboard that we're going to use as the main tool going forward. Then at T-5 is when we actually start our governance meetings for the green light. And those green light meetings are very specific about where we are relative to making sure that we are ready for everything for go live. And that's a formal process that we're going to be starting at T-5 with each of the counties. In addition to that, there are toolkits that are provided to the counties that support implementation and training and communications as well. But as you can see, there's a lot to get each of the counties ready, and the information is contained in a number of different sources, and we're providing the counties with that information along this schedule. So this is what the counties should be expecting in terms of what's going to be available to them as they're coming up and onboarding. 264, and I'm going to turn this one back to Greg to talk about the imaging migration.
Thanks, Rachel. So as we know, imaging and getting all the legacy images into the new solution is critical. That has to be in place for the counties to be able to move to the new imaging system. So we are tracking this risk around that migration and everything there. So what we've done is we've set up specific tracking templates for each of the counties, and we are meeting with the counties on a periodic basis and tracking how they are progressing. And right now for wave 1, they are all progressing on schedule, and we're in good shape. We're also sharing a lot of the lessons learned that came out of the C4 migration of images, and we will be planning to share additional lessons learned with each wave. So, the items that worked well for wave 1, we can apply to wave 2 and wave 3 and so forth. So, one of those key lessons is what we experienced originally with C4 is we were using, a snowball device to transfer the images, and we ran into challenges there. We did identify a more preferred approach is an over-the-wire transfer, so that the images actually get uploaded and we're able to move them into the Highland over the cloud environment and network, as opposed to getting a physical device. So those type of lessons learned are being shared and rolled out to the counties as we move the images over. So again, things are progressing well there. We're in good shape for wave 1, wave 2 as well. They're on track right now. So, good news on this risk, but we need to monitor it, make sure that we're sticking to plan. If we go to the next slide, we have 2 more risks that we wanted to share with you. 267 is one that we talked about last month. This is related to the GAGR UAT functionality and getting county data validation and having that all ready. So originally, we had planned to have all the GAGR functionality delivered by March with our 2203 release, and we have had to move some of that to our May release, which is 2205, which is why we've tracked the risk with UAT expecting to start at the end of June, right? We want to have that functionality there. So in the event that we see further delays, how can we mitigate the impact to UAT? And that's what this risk is about. So the team has already added additional resources so that they can have collaboration sessions. We're getting some great, input and feedback from our Gainwell partners as they're helping us work through this. We've also focused on accelerating some of our turnaround time frames to get feedback on the design, and that is helping. And one of the big things that we've done is we've expedited the design of any data model changes so that the conversion team can incorporate that into their golden data set 6 and their 7 processing so that it will be there in time for UAT. And then lastly, we are working with the UAT team to see if we are going to, or if something comes up and we deliver past May, how may that affect the UAT schedule and what can be our contingency option there? So perhaps we can move some of the GAGR functionality to testing a little bit later in the UAT cycle. So those are all types of things that we're focused on. As of now, we are tracking to deliver in May. So that's good news. And again, that's why we track the risk, is to make sure that that is delivered. We get the right focus and attention to it and avoid it from triggering into an issue. And with that, I'm going to transition back to Rachel. Actually, if we not change the slide yet, but risk 270, Rachel's going to talk a little bit about this.
One last risk. Just wanted to talk a little bit through change discussion guides. There was a risk that we have been tracking about making sure that the change discussion guides that are being produced from the project are providing the right level of information to prepare the counties for the change. There are a number of resources that are being produced for the counties from process flows to process change inventories, to change discussion guides, to job aids, to training materials. There is a complement where each one of these items actually fits together to provide the counties what they need to be able to be prepared for October. And one of those is the change discussion guide. And the change discussion guide, we've been monitoring and seeking and soliciting input, actually, frankly, from the counties, because we wanted to make sure that it is meeting the needs of the counties in order to ready the counties for specific changes that are going to be happening, moving from CalWIN to CalSAWS. And so what the team has been doing as a mitigation strategy, just to make sure that we're getting the right level of information, is we had sent out for Wave 1 counties the change discussion guides for a preliminary set of feedback. And we have received feedback from, we've had sessions this past week or so with all 3 counties for Wave 1 to get some preliminary feedback on what information is helpful, what information is not helping, and where we can make modifications to those change discussion guides so that they're providing the right value to the counties. And so the team is as part of our overall strategy, it's important to get feedback from the people that are actually going to be using the change discussion guides and providing the support for the staff that are going to be affected by the change. And so there has been a process to collect some of that feedback. It mentioned that we got some preliminary feedback, and the team is going to be working with the counties over the next couple of weeks for Wave 1 to complete those change discussion guides so that they are ready for the counties and provide that level of information that they need. So that's where we are working right now. There are some items that are remaining for Wave 1 counties relative to what we have branded as a project, the process change inventory, which identifies what are the changes from the as is and the to be that we are going to be coming back to the Wave 1 counties to close out some of those decisions that were pending and make sure that they are reflected appropriately in the process models and then also reflected appropriately in the change discussion guides. So a lot of the lessons learned coming from Wave 1 will be applied to future waves as we start to onboard the counties for development of the change discussion guides. So I wanted to provide that update, but it is a new risk that we are tracking and one that we will definitely at OPAC next week be having a discussion about this one in particular. And that is the conclusion, Greg, of our risks. We'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Greg, for that very thorough discussion of the risks. Are there any questions or comments from our PSC? I did have a comment, and I don't know how to resolve this on risk number 262, which it makes me a little nervous about how big of a catch-all it seems to grab. I mean, in my mind, having been a former C4 County training was one of the challenges that we had, and having training as part of an overall risk, aside from everything else, including communication and technical readiness, I'm just concerned that that particular area may get lost in assessing the level of risk for the counties. So I don't know if I'm not making a recommendation here, I'm just expressing like if there a way around that, like, because that it's easy for that to get lost in assessing our level of risk.
Yeah, and Jesse, I think that's it's a great point. This was intended to make sure that we were providing timely information throughout, was what this was intended to do, so that people understood when they were going to be getting certain information, when certain things needed to be done, but recognizing that training in itself is one of the areas that is really critical path for us to get to go live. We can look at pulling that one out as a specific item. But we want to retain this one just so that we're making sure that from that, how everything fits together, that's really what that risk is intended, is to show where the intersections exist between the work that Greg's team is doing, the work that my team is doing, the work that the counties are doing, the work that the consortium is doing, the work that Gainwell is doing, how we're all fitting together is what 262 is really trying to achieve. And so I can pull out though the training piece of it too, just so that we make sure that we get a laser focus on it as well.
Thank you, Rachel.
Sure.
Are there comments or questions from PSC?
Hi, Jesse. This is James Lacerda
James.
with Region 5. And it's in regards to Risk 270, and I'm super happy and thrilled to see that we are actively engaging staff and developing the most comprehensive change discussion guides as we can. The question is it going to be a living document, post wave 1 going live? Are we going to look at these again and see how do we strengthen them based on lessons learned from wave 1?
In terms of James' application to future waves, is that what the question is?
No, it's just like, are these going to be guides that are evolving based on lessons learned and information we learned from counties going up on wave 1? So post wave 1, we have these guides, but we know that we're going to learn a lot from wave 1. Are we going to revisit these guides to see, can we strengthen them, enhance them, change them for future waves?
Yes, for future waves. Yeah, and that's what I was trying to get at is for future waves, yes. The intent of these change discussion guides is to help the county go through their change, but not to continue to have it be an evolution to maintain and update for the county that has already proceeded through the change. But we will take the lessons learned from each wave and apply them as we're moving forward. There's already some things that we've taken from lessons learned from C4 that we've heard as they have gone through their change that we need to incorporate in the change discussion guides too. So some of that is getting fed in based off of feedback that we've heard from C4. Yep.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel. Appreciate that.
Rachel, I think that James brings up a really good point because we keep going forward and we're learning lessons and we're applying them forward. But maybe we should take an action item on a feedback loop sort of retrospectively if the prior waves are saying, you know what, in light of that and in light of what was learned, maybe there is some maintenance of some of the change discussion guides that they're starting to use as a foundation for induction training or something else like that. And maybe we could have a conversation and loop back around through an action item to say, is there a process that we can make that available so the prior counties can take advantage of any documentation, lessons learned, so they can use that going forward. So we're plowing forward, but let's not forget the folks that have just went live and let them apply that as well. And I say in turn too, for our 39 former C4 counties, making a place available, because we know these are very county specific, but if there are some things and helpful items that our production counties can use, let's follow up and see if there's a place that we can do that to make it available to all of our counties.
Yeah, and John, I took that down a note about making sure that we incorporate the retrospective aspect of it. Timing wise, the CDGs are intended to be ready so that training can leverage them, because it's really about making sure the people that are coming in for T and the supervisors really understand what that change is as a foundation before training starts. So that timing is going to be really important as we think about when we do those retrospectives. Yep.
Okay. All right. Do we have any comments from the public on this item? Okay. Thank you, Rachel and Greg. Next item is multi-factor authentication. We have Mike and Luz.
Good afternoon, it's Luz again. So I did want to provide an update as to where we are in our MFA. I'm glad to report that as of end of January, we've completed the rollout to all our in-county users and did provide some support that first week after rollout, but a great milestone in our ability to actually have MFA enabled across all our CalSAWS enterprise services. Since we've gone live, we've got daily 60,000 or so successful logins from an MFA perspective being done across all the services. We had a support bridge that handled real-time issues for the first three days of go live. And since then, we've got about 40 incidents that we've received and have been working with those end users to resolve. I do have a tip for everyone who's utilizing the MFA. CalSAWS has a security policy of a 20-minute timeout. So whenever you're within the CalSAWS services, if any of them were to time out due to inactivity, it does prompt you for a login. That prompt for login is what currently MFA is tied to from our current implementation pattern. If we move on to the next slide, since the rollout, we have received feedback, and I did want to call out two very specific areas of feedback that we received. So one is on that MFA policy I just described. Our MFA is tied to login. So whenever you log into one of our services, you will be prompted for your MFA. And therefore, if you do have inactivity for about 20 minutes, you'll be re-prompted for MFA. We are working with our security officers here on the project to review the policy to discuss how we can improve and evolve this particular use case and user experience for our end users. So more to come on this. We also do recognize there's inconsistency currently with the various services that we provide, in particular with our third parties such as imaging and the Click platform, where it is possible that if you do jump to one of those other platforms and you're heavily active in Click using a dashboard, your CalSAWS core will time out, which will then prompt you for another login. So we are currently working with those partners to understand from a roadmap perspective when we can do a more two-way communication in order to improve that experience. So I did want to call that out as another item that we're looking to improve. Both of these items are being analyzed, and as we get further updates from our teams on progress, we'll be sure to bring that back to you. And please note that we're open and looking forward to the feedback because we are looking to further improve the MFA experience for our incoming users. I'm going to pause for any questions.
Thank you, Luz. Are there any questions from PSC?
Hi, Jesse.
I have a
This is James.
question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Hi. Hi, Cindy from Kern County Region 4. And we've been having some issues related to getting the OTP back in a timely fashion, apparently. And I think there's other counties that have had those same issues. I'm wondering if that's something that you guys are looking at as well.
Yes.
And I'm not very well versed on that, but
No, not a problem. So we do have that on our list of items that we're investigating with each one of the counties. We're able to see the emails leave our ecosystem, at which point it does hit your side of the house. An OTP is one-time password, which we deliver via email. So we are looking to work with your local IT support to better understand what is going on your side so that we can get a better picture of that round trip that's occurring with the email. So we have a list of local contacts, so please know we'll be reaching out to you shortly on that.
great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no
Luz,
problem.
Was
Yes.
that is also so just for the benefit of the folks in the chat, OTP is one-time password, and is
Correct.
something that's only affecting certain counties, or you've received reports from multiple counties?
We've received delays of the email. So MFA was implemented via email. So you have to receive an email that has the secret code that you will then enter at the login screen. So we have gotten sporadic reports from various counties that the email is taking more than 2 to 5 minutes to be received. So we're working with each one of those that's been reported. So it is sporadic, it's inconsistent. So I think our approach right now is to kind of work with each county that's reported it so that we can discuss with our local IT department what is the path the email is taking to better understand that round trip.
If it were working properly, should our expectation be for how long that would take?
It's almost pretty instantaneous.
Okay.
When everything's all working great.
All right. And I heard James had a question earlier.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. Quick comment on, and I'm super happy to see that we are looking at reducing the number of MFAs. One of the things that I keep advocating for is if I'm known to that device, maybe it's just that one-time MFA. If I switch devices, obviously I'm going to go through that process again, but I'll let the experts and you guys tackle that. But I'm happy to see that we're evaluating that, and that's a priority. The other comment that I have, and we actually just realized this today here in San Bernardino, is that we had Outlook go down as well as webmail. So when we have both of those systems go down on us, we were we're in a little bit of a pickle. It's interesting that it never kind of bubbled up when we were talking about MFA that this could happen. So again, I bring that up as to something that we need to consider. and to tackle as well with the MFA is that it will happen to counties to where both of the systems go down. And how do we get our staff back in there?
Excellent point. I'll take that back to the team and look at potential options.
Is that okay if we take an action item on that?
Yeah, I was gonna say. same
Yes, I'll
thing,
take an
Jess.
action.
Take the action item and we'll bring it back for next PSC.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
All on
it.
the same page.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this item from PSC? Okay, hearing none. Do we have any public comment? Okay, thank you, Luz.
Thank you.
I think we're ready to move on to item number 9, which is an update on production CalSAUS imaging solution and preparations for LA County migration. Arnold?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. And so I will provide an update overall on the key steps that we are moving through as we prepare for the Los Angeles County go live. So there's really 4 key items that we are focusing on. One is the enhanced performance testing that Greg talked about. Have some more details I'll be sharing in subsequent slides. The short summary is it's going well and we're having good returns there. The second is around migrated image validation. And we're coming up on the period when that will occur as we're reaching the load point of the Los Angeles images. And there's a slide that shows progress there. The third item is around our model office and our UAT retest. And so that is really the process that we are setting up to have Los Angeles County confirm their processes on the system so they can see the flows and the workflow and identify if there's any issues that are arising out of that, and as well as completing the UAT that was started last fall. And then the fourth component is around the training, to where the next round of training has started this week for both web-based and instructor-led. If we move on to the next slide. Talking about the enhanced performance testing. So we had a successful run last week, and ultimately where we came up with is we had very good response times, up to 150% of the forecasted 58 county volumes. So we had the load up to the 58 county expected volumes. We were able to take it another 50% higher before we started seeing issues. So that's giving us very high confidence that the system will be performant when LA County goes live, because that is only 40 county volume. But we are doing it coming out of the testing. We did see some adjustments that have to be made to the system that'll allow more stable operation. Those adjustments will be going in within the next week. And we will be executing another round of performance testing after that, and defects get implemented next week. During that test, we'll also have LA County users logged in so that as we have load on the system, they'll be able to experience firsthand as the imaging system performance, so they can see the impact as those loads increase. So overall, positive results coming out of the performance testing. If we move on to the next slide. We are also tracking a series of defects that are critical for both the existing C4 counties and their daily operation with the system, as well as would be felt by Los Angeles County when we go live. And so we've categorized a series of defects that need to be and will be resolved prior to the LA County go live. And some of those are around document visibility. And this was with our surrounding the deletion event, to where there was an initial restoration, but then 42,000 documents ultimately fell out of workflow and became not visible by the county workers. So that created an issue with being able to search and find those documents. Those documents were restored on Friday the 11th, and the team has been monitoring them as they've been working through the process. So that defect is closed. The next is around a series of defects on document searchability. And so this is where workarounds are in place, where county workers can look in other views, either at the person level, to be able to find the documents. And so there's a series of defects that will be closed between now and 3/11. Good news is we were able to move one of those up, and that was the 236, let's see, the 237374, which was originally scheduled for 3/11, but that also went in on 2/10, and that had to do with the blank case numbers. So we're also looking at moving up those other 3 as rapidly as possible. The dates listed here are the long end as to when they will be implemented. The other fix that went in over the weekend was delays in workflow. And so this is where it was reported that at certain times there were up to 3 to 4 hours of delays for the documents to make their way through the workflow and show up in the appropriate queues. A change went in on Friday to address that issue, where that will also be tested as part of the performance testing that will be occurring next week. And so we're monitoring the effectiveness of that to see if there are any other instances of that extended processing times. And then there are some additional impacts to usability defects. And so the bottom one, the return mail intermittently being marked received, that was accelerated, and that was also implemented last Friday. And the others are going to be implemented in the course of the upcoming weeks. One of note is the intermittent image display issues with Internet Explorer resulting in the gray screen. There is an overall CalSAWS enhancement that's in regards to HTML5 that will be implemented on 3.3 that will help address this. And this will allow the counties to be able to use the higher level, more modern browsers, either Edge or Chrome. So we reviewed this list with LA County. We're providing weekly updates. We're also implementing a weekly digest to the C4 counties so that as these defects are resolved and confirmed to be resolved, the county workers can stop using the workarounds and use the core functionality as designed with the system. Will you move on to the next slide, please? So then if we take a look at how we're proceeding with the overall image load of the LA images. As you can see, we're well over 200 million images that have been imported. The reason why you see the orange line have a flat line is we've completed the import of all the images off the snowballs and produced a report back to Nextlogica, who is the Los Angeles County provider helping with the export of the images out of the legacy system to show the difference of things that failed or exceptioned out. The uptick is the receipt of the Delta file that addresses those exceptions. And so that takes us through the December of 2021 time period. Now the team is working on obtaining the images from December to current, and that will be the next wave of the imports. And then the team will transition into the daily Delta process to where on a daily basis, as the images are being imported into the existing system, they'll also be transitioned over to the CalSAWS imaging system. So overall, the good news is that image migration is on track with no issues blocking at the current point in time. We move to the next slide. So the other component that we're doing, and this is a lesson learned out of the C4 as well, it's a new phase that we've implemented with the additional time with this delay in the LA County go live, is the model office. And so this is giving the ability to test the user security rights, the batch scanning workflow validation, the physical scanners, report refreshes, and basically provide a system where LA County can validate the new processes and identify if there are any issues. Coming out of that, at this point, we have 0 reported defects. and a high success rate. So it is proving to be helpful for the Los Angeles County team to validate the imaging solution prior to the cutover point. The last point is that last bullet point around retesting of the UAT scenarios. And those were the scenarios that were still open last fall. And so now we're going through the retest in the current UAT environment. Again, no blockers, so we're seeing successful passes on those. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So here are some overall stats coming out of that UAT model office. So we have 60 scripts that Los Angeles County developed, 31 have started, 26 have passed, 1 has been withdrawn. And then we also provided the imaging reports, which were delivered on February 7th. We have 3 retests from the original UAT, 4 new scripts. So from an overall perspective, making positive progress and on track for completion prior to the go live. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So if we look at the overall UAT success criteria, UAT retest is 100% success rate, the successful completion of the model office scripts, and no open priority 1 high or non-cosmetic defects, which we are currently on track to meet. Let's move to the next slide, please. So now this slide gives the list of the web-based training modules that the Los Angeles County users have available to them today. You can see that it has a series of modules, typically 20, 30 minutes in duration, and it's really focusing on how you use the new system. So those are available for the Los Angeles County users to take advantage of. In addition, if we move to the next slide, we're getting into the hands-on side of it as well. And so we enhanced the web-based modules based upon the C4 county experiences. And then we also including the training reports so that we're able to keep track of who is completing the training and be able to encourage the county workers to do so and identify where there may be areas of lighter take-up so that can be actioned prior to the go live. We move on to the next slide. In addition to those web-based training modules, there are imaging guides that the team has produced since the go live. There's fact sheets, and there's a series of videos that are accessible to all county users, both the C4 counties and the LA County users. Let's move on to the next slide. Then we have the imaging training, the SME, the ITTSF SME refresher classes. Those were occurring on the 9th and the 10th. And so those are the opportunities to be instructor-led, hands-on, and are currently going through. Let's move on to the next slide. And at that point, Jesse, happy to answer any questions based upon what I went through.
Thank you, Arnold. I did have a question. I know I can understanding the time frame for LA County. There's a lot of focus on the LA County preparation. I'm just curious because it also talks a little bit about CalSAW's production imaging. We had that recent CIT that really surfaced a lot of defects that had a very big impact on our staff's experience, the user experience. A lot of defects were not known, of course, not known to us, and these workarounds really caused a lot of issues for our county users. In fact, many of the things that we had been hearing as benefits Cal issues turned out to actually be imaging issues upon investigation, at least in our county. So I don't know if this is the appropriate thing in this moment or should be an action item. Like, what steps are being taken to avoid these types of defects or to be able to bring them to light? Because when our EWs are having trouble looking for a document and they've taken the steps that they were instructed to do and they don't know any other way, their default's going to be it's not there, right? And that does cause, it's a huge pain point for the counties.
Yes, and we absolutely acknowledge that and have been working very closely with our Highland vendor to accelerate the resolution of those issues that are impacting that. In addition, we're enhancing our communications and sending out weekly updates. The first one will be coming out this week to the release managers for distribution out to the counties around that defect status and pulling and removing those workarounds that have to be there, as well as providing the updates as to when the next set of defects will be implemented in production and when we can discontinue those workarounds. So increasing the level of communication. We're also in the process of developing videos that will be more quick tips so that it helps the county users. The good news is a lot of these defects that have had the workarounds where it's made it harder to find those documents are targeted with implementation dates within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So the county users with this last Friday's implementation should already be seeing some relief on that.
Thank you for that, Arnold. And John, good to see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to summarize the points, and Arnold, help me out, but just to put a point on it, I think what's been experienced with the defects and the communication and the workarounds, I think that was sort of the impetus for your question, Jesse. We have a gap that we're filling. It should not be, that should not be the expectation. So there's 2 ways of filling that. Number 1 is getting those defects and retiring those workarounds. Number 2 is enhanced communications that the counties can get to be able to get that out to your folks that are using the imaging system. And Arnold talked about those strategies, and those things are going to be coming out on a weekly basis. That's going to talk about retirement of those workarounds and those types of things. And then further, some quick hitting videos that talk about these items that you could push out to the line staff so it isn't word of mouth down to the folks using that, so we can get that directly out to put those things in context. But what's been experienced, those defects, retiring those are our highest priority, as Arnold said. And then the communications. The CIT was the first step, but it was far from the last step. Then it's that reoccurring cadence of summarizing, supplemented by videos.
Thank you, John, and thank you for recognizing just that piece from our users. And I appreciate the communication, and not to rehash this. I think one comment that one of our EWs said to us is, "Thank you for this training. This is great and all, but can the system just work as we expect it to be?" Our users have really high expectations because they have a big job ahead of them in terms of providing services to our communities. So really hoping that with LA County moving on along, that we will have the defects or not, we don't expect 0 defects, but I think just a level, it's been a very rough ride for the former C4 counties. And I think just wanted to express some of this anxiety that many of us are feeling with this migration. With that, are there any comments from my fellow PSC members?
Hi, Jesse. This is Cindy from Kern County, Region 4. And thank you, Arnold and John, for that enhanced communication. I think those weekly updates will really be very helpful. It's really hard, and I agree with everything Jesse had said, but it's very hard to try to keep the communication for our staff and trying to find the information and communicate on what's been fixed and what hasn't in the workarounds. And so I appreciate the enhanced communication that will come out this week. I think that will be very helpful. And the CIT also we shared with our staff, and that was a good starting point in trying to understand a lot of the complexities. And then the videos, we'll look forward to those videos. We had heard they were coming, so I think those will be helpful too as you try to piece together some of the smaller pieces. You can send those out and people can grasp that a little easier than the larger training components that was developed. And so those I think also will be very helpful. So we look forward to that. And so my question, I guess, is I see on one of those pages where LA County is having some maybe training sessions or demos or those types of things. Is there any opportunity for the C4 counties to attend any of those? Because it seems like each time maybe we could see it again or see what's new, because there's obviously new things that are better now. Is there an opportunity for any of the other counties to attend those sessions? I'm assuming they're virtual, so.
They're virtual. Let us take that as an action item and say, because one of the other items that we are going to do is we do have our team visiting the counties and sitting with the caseworkers to do this as well. So I think there is an opportunity between that and a refresher training session. So let us take that as an action item and we'll report back on that.
Thank you.
Albert just has his hand up.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Jesse. I'm Albert Banuelos with Region 5. And, thank you for the update. I really appreciate it. This is an item that I have mentioned over and over that we are here in San Diego tracking because, imaging, as for all of you, it kind of feeds into many other systems that we have and, making sure that imaging works, as Jesse mentioned, just make it work for our staff. And then that would also assist us locally make the right decisions as to if we're going to go with core with other functionalities that are codependent with our imaging. So I appreciate the update. Also, will Kelvin, two questions. One, will Kelvin counties also be part of those weekly updates so that we ensure that we are following along? And also, do we have a targeted cutover date for Los Angeles? I don't know if I missed that.
So yes, we will include the Kelvin counties on the communication on the weekly update. And the current targeted date for Los Angeles County to cut over is March 14th.
Okay, I see Sandra has her hand up.
Hi, this is another question. Again, thank you again for providing the additional communication because imaging has been one of the areas where we're focused on getting it right. But with the last release, the release that we had, we experienced some imaging slowness and some applications that were impacted. But I'm wondering, is there any additional quality assurance that's being done when there's new releases being issued out so that there is little to no impact on imaging?
So yes, there is. We're working with our ClearBest QA partners as well as with our Highland vendor around the improved quality and regression testing. So that is a focus as well to avoid other degradation events.
Hey Arnold, this is Dan. I can jump in as well.
Absolutely, Dan.
This is Dan Dean with the Quality Assurance team. I'm the project manager of the QA team. We are involved in testing out the pieces of the application that are developed custom to CalSAWs. We did spend some time last week on this in forensics, figuring out root cause. It ended up that the latest incident of images not being found was due to a maintenance script internal to the application. So we've had conversations with both Highland and Accenture about involving us in those up front, because by default we hit the application solutions, but we don't hit the third-party software itself. We're also going out into the counties with those site visits that Arnold mentioned. We had about a dozen visits in January. We'll continue that through February so we can personally witness and involve what users are seeing and if they are training issues or if they are really in the application itself.
I apologize. I'm just going to interject and ask folks to make sure that they're on mute. Please unmute. I'm sorry, put yourself on mute if you're not speaking. Thank you. Sorry, Dan.
That's okay. I think I got my points out. I'm not sure if I answered the question, so I'll just pause and see if there's any more questions for QA on the image.
You did. Thank you so much, Dan.
Okay.
And Arnold, did we have any of our partners from Highland on? Were they able to join or just joining for JPA on Friday?
Hey, John, this is Jeff Harrell. I'm on. Yes, I am.
Jeff, appreciate it, Jeff. Maybe a couple comments. We know that we've been working really closely together. And
Absolutely.
that Highland's been working on some process improvement and testing and collaboration. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Jeff.
Absolutely. Thanks. Appreciate the opportunity to talk with everybody. Yeah, we do recognize that there have been issues, but the team is really working very closely with our partners, Accenture and ClearBest there. And we are focused tremendously on addressing these issues. I know that there's been workarounds. And as Arnold mentioned, many of these workarounds are going to be addressed with some of these fixes during the next, well, some of the fixes that have been already implemented, as well as fixes that will be implemented during the next couple of weeks. And the team is doubling down and working very diligently and hard to ensure that some of the past issues are not repeated, and that we have a nice, smooth go live with a nice, solution for everybody that meets their expectations. So. Yeah, we have gone through a lot of performance testing, additional performance testing, and a lot of different things that were lessons learned that we went through from the C4 implementation, and so far so good, as Arnold indicated.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you speaking up on that, and the continued focus of the Highland team. We know that as we go forward, the expectations are for now all 39, soon 40, and for each wave. So to do that, we want to avoid those situations that cause workarounds, but also have enhanced communications that the counties can get out to the users when there are issues. There's going to be issues, but we want to try to mitigate when those things take place, and then enhance our communications going forward. So appreciate that. Arnold, is there any other items that you wanted to sort of round out on some of those questions?
I think we covered them well. Happy to, if there's, or provide additional clarity if required.
Thank you, Arnold. Thank you, John. Are there any other comments from our project steering committee? Okay, do we have any public comment on this item? Okay, we're ready to move on. Thank you, Arnold. Move on to item number 10. Rachel.
Jesse? Oh, Gabby, yeah, you're there. Gabby, you want to take it?
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Jesse. Perfect. Benefits Cal readiness for the approaching LA County cutover as we retire the YBN application and prepare to transition over to Benefits Cal. Testing overall is going very well. We're now today at 100% executed, which is right on schedule, and we're at 77% passed. There are a handful of defects and change requests that have been made by LA County to address before go live, but as of right now, we're on track to wrap those up over the next couple of weeks and maintain our schedule. So no concerns on our side there. Likewise with security testing, we're just performing normal security scans and readiness. On performance testing, this is an item where the CalSAWS team and imaging teams have spent a good amount of time discussing what steps are being taken to test the performance of each application to ensure that it is performant for the volume that we expect to see for LA County. And for Benefits Cal, our goal is to really take the document that the customer or CBO has uploaded and send that over to the imaging solution as fast as possible. And that's really our handshake. That's where our work ends on that part and imaging picks up. And so we're seeing very fast performance right now with the C4 counties, sub 1 second. So as close to real time as you can get. We're seeing the system is very performant, but we continue to performance test with the imaging team, continue to prepare data and run through those cycles so that everything can be verified before go live. Around training and communications, work continues. We've hosted 3 training sessions and there's one more next week with our CBO and advocate community, kind of an awareness and demo session of the application that's planned. And then we're continuing to prepare for deployment. So we have cutover checklists and all the normal activities around green light and readiness to work our checklist and ensure we're ready to go to serve LA. Let's move to the next slide if we could. That's the high level, and then we'll share a couple of updates on more detailed progress. First, around communications, the communication content has been finalized, the translation is in progress, and the distribution of those communications is on hold at the moment, pending some final confirmation of go live readiness activities across both imaging and Benefits Cal. So as soon as we receive that green light, we'll begin to send out communications to residents about Benefits Cal Go Live. And that includes emails, SMS text messages for those who have opted in to receive them, push notifications to those folks who use the mobile app that exists today in LA County. And then LA is also planning some social media content out there. So we'll work to reach everyone wherever they are in any communication channel to share out updates. On the next, if we could, we also have an update on our training. As mentioned, 3 sessions are complete and 1 more is next week with our CBO community. Next slide, please. Great. Post-go live support. Here we're planning a model very similar to what we supported for C4. It worked really well for Benefits Cal. We'll have daily health check emails. We'll have daily calls for some period of time and then twice weekly calls. And we've just connected with the consortium help desk team as well to work in partnership to be ready for call volume and to set up some special channels where folks who are really struggling can get the help that they need quickly. On the next, if we could. Great. With that, we'll hand over to Kelvin Wave 1 to share their readiness for Kelvin implementation. Jesse, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. Do we have any questions from PSC on item number 10? Do we have any public comment? Okay, I think this is item number 11. This is Rachel. Oh, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Because I double muted. Oh, I keep saying after 2 years, I should have figured this out in the pandemic. It is actually going to be Greg and I, and Greg is going to take the first piece on conversion readiness. We're going to walk through conversion. We're going to walk through the system. We're going to walk through readiness relative to technical as well as implementation, training, and change management. But Greg is going to take us on the first part around conversion and where we are.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. So this is kind of a high-level schedule that we had presented last month during the JPA, and we do have it broken out in the various sections because if you recall, there's a lot of activities that are going on. So where we're focused on here is around conversion and conversion readiness. In the next 30 days, you can see that's highlighted on our chart here. We are in the midst of our converted data testing. So that testing is going on. We are working to resolve the defects and getting ready to deliver our golden data set number 6. So that is targeted for the end of March. So that'll be falling in the next 30, 45 days here. As I also mentioned, as we were talking about risk, we are in the process of getting ready for our mock cutover and our first run there. So the team is working through kind of the planning and all the activities that need to happen there. So those activities are on flight. And also we've got our county image processing. So we talked about that with RISC 264 and getting the county's images extracted, exported out of their systems, making them available so that we can start importing them into the Highland solution. So all that is in progress. Everything is working towards plan here right now, and we're in good shape. Obviously, we still have the key risk around converted data tests that we're watching, and the team is very much focused on addressing those key defects. So I guess just one other quick thing. I mean, we did flag on this particular slide, right, the individual risks that we talked about, so you can see where that fits in from an overall process and program perspective. But that's kind of the quick update from a conversion perspective. As we go to our next slide here, it's focused a bit more on the application or the system readiness. So you can see that we've got a number of activities that are in flight right now around user acceptance test planning. The team, Peggy and Saranjan, have had their kickoff and they're starting to get ready for user acceptance testing. And you can see below that, we have our imaging testing that is going on. So that's a lot of the enhanced performance testing that Arnold spoke about as we're getting ready for LA County. So that is all moving forward. We have our contact center discovery and design activities. Those phases are done. As you can see a little bit further out in the May timeframe is where we have our batch performance testing as well as user acceptance testing. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a number of batch performance fixes that we will be implementing and testing before we actually get to that, performance test window there. So it's just from a granularity perspective, we don't have that level of granularity on the chart here, but that is all moving forward on schedule and on plan right now. So Rachel, I think you were going to talk about the API development.
I was going to talk a little bit about the API development, Greg, in addition to the process simulation, just because I know that the counties had some interest about, what really is involved in process simulation. And we're going to talk a little bit more about it next week at OPAC, but just as a precursor, one of the things in order for us to say that the system is really certified before we go into production, we want to make sure that the configuration for the counties has actually been validated. For things that will support items like routing of documents, to support items around routing of applications that are coming from different channels where people are requesting services, and making sure that all of that is actually established and it's routing correctly, and the workflow is actually supporting what the county's to-be business process looks like. So that's really what we're going to look at relative to process simulation. We'll get into a little bit more detail about that next week at OPAC and then in upcoming meetings. Around the county API development, right now the counties, there are a number of counties that are in their phases of developing what they have chosen as their county APIs, and this is relative to wave 1. So right now the counties are developing. We're looking later on this summer for the counties to start to get access to the sandbox environment. I'll call it a sandbox environment where they can actually test those APIs with CalSAWS, so that we have that as an area that we're validating before we go live. And then later on, we have a couple of activities right now that are just starting relative to central print. Right now within this next 30-day window, where the team is starting to look at central print related configuration and validation activities. Okay, if we could move to the next slide, and I think I'm going to take the next 3. Look ahead for where we are right now for technical readiness. And what I'll characterize the next 30 days is really about making sure that we are finalizing those requirements around what needs to be in place from a technology viewpoint. And this is really about the technology infrastructure, the technology operations in terms of what needs to be there. That also includes about the counties preparing right now around their wide area networks, around their WAN and what they need to have available. The enablement of what they need to have in place, or the counties need to have in place relative to their extranet, is something that's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. And we're also now starting to work with the counties to make sure that we've got, oh, we just lost a slide, making sure that we have the analysis looked at relative to what the overall financial impact would be. Good thing I've got a backup here for a second. What the financial impact is around, specifically around kiosks, because we know that the counties have been asking about, when do I have to procure? Do I have the right information associated with that procurement, and knowing what that financial impact would be for the county. So within the next 30 days, that needs analysis is going to be concluded around that hardware for the lobby management related kiosks. Okay, we get our slide back. I moved to my other one. If we could move to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about where we are with OCM and training related activities about the look ahead. So the next 30 days, there's a couple of things that are going on. We still have the ongoing TAC reviews for the training committees, where they're getting feedback from that preliminary instructor-led training that's going to be conducted later on this summer. The team is also right now working on putting out the first readiness survey. If you look at the readiness survey relative to change readiness, so making sure that the counties are actually ready for the change. So we're working through both wave 1 and wave 2 at this point of time, but wave 1 right now, we're getting out that change readiness survey to make sure that we have a baseline established, so that when we get to T-6 and T-3, we can understand, is that readiness progressing along the way. And then I had talked much earlier on that risk 270 about the change discussion guides, which is a place right now where the team is very heavily engaged. As part of our overall strategy, we use something that we call human-centered change. And the reason why we want to go back out to the counties to solicit their feedback before completing an entire change discussion guide is to make sure that we're hearing what those needs really are. So the efforts that are ongoing right now is that preliminary feedback on the change discussion guide, the refinement of the change discussion guide, the incorporation of the pending questions and decisions that need to be made in the process change inventories, and then going back out to the counties with that complete view of those change discussion guides. So there's 4 key things that we're working on right now relative to the change discussion guides. And if we move to the last slide, our pink colored one, is really around our activities associated with implementation. So the county should have already started to have their TOS team meetings. They would have started this month. There are varying degrees of frequency across the counties, at least once a month for the county. Some of the counties have requested more frequently. So we have TOS team meetings where there's support that is being provided to the counties right now for wave 1. We're also starting to define what that readiness criteria is. We had talked about in the risks earlier that there are a set of things that we need to start measuring and monitoring that will be reflective in that dashboard at T-6. So it's right now defining what is that measurement, how are we going to actually say whether we're tracking or not tracking relative to our go live date. We are working on some updates right now to some of the county specific work plans for wave 1 and starting the work associated with wave 2 right now. And we have a global IPOC meeting that's coming up, and it's for all of our 18 counties, not just specific to the wave 1 county. So that's something that we're working on as well. You heard about the education sessions that are going on right now for ad hoc, but there's some other education sessions that we're also doing from a preparedness viewpoint for the counties too. One topic area that we've heard in particular is about making sure that the counties have got application security awareness. And these are your roles and profiles that you're setting up within the counties. So there are education sessions that are coming up relative to how those roles actually factor into CalSAWS and how they can be set up. The conversion team has been working very, Greg had talked about what is being done internally on conversion, but there's a lot that the counties are actually looking at right now too, relative to supporting the conversion before go live. And also what the team is doing to make sure that we are preparing the county relative to conversion related activities post go live. And that involves making sure that we're identifying workarounds that may be needed associated with conversion, but also anything that we need to do to prepare the counties post go live for cleaning up the cases once the conversion has actually been executed. So the teams are working on that as well. And I believe that is it in terms of the overall update on our wave 1 readiness. And I'm going to turn it back to Jesse.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Greg. Do we have any questions from PSC on this item? Okay, seeing none or hearing none. Do we have any public comment? Okay, I think we're ready for the next item.
Thanks, Jesse. This is Karen Rappinati. I'll introduce, and I'm here with a couple of my friends, Rachel and Lisa today. I wanted to provide a little bit of information on the ARPA funding that was approved last week. Just to give a little bit of background, this was funding that we were informed of by CDSS a couple of months ago and asked to put in an estimate for a variety of things that we could work through this year. And by this year, I mean by September, because it's federal funding. What things we could accomplish between now and then. One of those top items was the release of information, which has been a top priority for the advocates. And it is a challenging effort for us to be able to implement by September, but it is our top priority based on the receipt of this approval for funding. So we will be focusing, and that's both a Benefits Cal effort as well as a CalSAWS effort, working together because it does have information that goes back and forth between CalSAWS proper as well as Benefits Cal. In order to manage that challenging effort, we will need to move out some of the new functionality. It's not existing functionality in any of the applications, some new functionality that was slated to be in 4.0 in order to accommodate getting in these other priorities with that funding. Additionally, there is a communication or marketing campaign for Benefits Cal that Rachel can address. The archetype-based application for students, Rachel mentioned this earlier with regard to focusing the application on the population that you're trying to serve. And in this case, it is for students. And then linked to the release of information is a CBO referral code. This has also been a high priority for the CBOs because it helps them be able to quantify the applications that they're working on. And so moving to the next slide, Rachel will talk a little bit more about what the changes are that we'll need to move out, and then we'll move into our release information. Rachel.
Great, thanks, Karen. So Karen had mentioned we've got our plate full with a lot of things and a lot of interest in wanting to get some new enhancements in Benefits Cal. So there are a couple of areas that we had identified internally as options for removing from the release in 4.0 to accommodate some of these things that we've heard are higher priority. The first one I'll say is probably the easiest, I would say, because of ABOD waiver is in place right now. And we did have plans to implement functionality to allow folks to be able to see their time clocks for ABODs within Benefits Cal. But the plan, in order to accommodate those changes that Karen had addressed, would be to actually move this out, given the fact that the ABOD waiver is going to be in place at least for another year. So that's the first item. The second item is around new functionality for Benefits Cal, and there's a couple of areas that are really focused in this, focused on Benefits Cal related to Release 4. There are support requests that individuals could request housing assistance, or they could request exemptions or extensions to their particular time clocks, and they're lumped under this category of what we refer to as support requests. We also had requirements to include online the ability for people to complete their information for CalWORKs 2.0. So these are things like barriers assessments that are included in that, and to be able to share that information with their employment services worker. We had also requirements to include the ability to do searching for GROW, and which is to be able to have the ability to look for what types of jobs that are available in an online fashion so that people could understand what kind of jobs were available for GROW. And then overall time clocks, not just for ABOD, but for CalWORKs as well. There was a request to be able to allow people to see where they were relative to their time on aid for the CalWORKs program. So that's new functionality that would need to be moved. And then the last two items, we do have currently in Benefits Cal one-way messaging, but there was an intent to have two-way messaging where the worker would be able to send a message and the customer would be able to send a response back. So that second part of the messaging would be moved to a later release, and the ability to do enhanced chat, which is new ways of, or actually the ability to do enhanced chat, that would still stay in 4.0. So our two-way messaging stays, our enhanced chat stays, but our new functionality in ABODs would move out to later releases. I think that's it, Karen.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Oh, sorry, we still have more, Jesse.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. That's fine.
Moving over to Lisa.
All right, good afternoon again. So I will be covering on the next few slides updates as it relates to our core CalSource application and core CalSource releases. You know, we have kind of a couple of flavors. We have our baseline releases every other month, as well as priority items. But before I jump into that, I did want to make sure I covered off Sandra's question earlier around support activities for the counties. So as it relates to the core application, we definitely have a lot of pre as well as post activities there for our releases. Some of the pre activities is as each and every change is going through the system and going through the committees and for review, we do a training assessment to determine if there's updates to online help or web-based training or job aids that are needed for any particular new functionality that is deployed. Those are communicated out to the counties as well as through the training committee. We have major upcoming changes that we send out in advance of our bi-monthly releases to give the counties a heads up of what's planned in the future. We have the release notes with everything that goes out into the system, every baseline and priority release, as well as for our baseline releases, we do a webcast. So prior to a release, we solicit feedback directly from the counties as to what features and functions they'd like to have demonstrated. That is pulled together and usually held about a week and a half before the release is deployed. Once we deploy a release, we then also have our daily calls with the counties that week after to hear any questions, comments, concerns that come from the county. So just wanted to hit those high-level points, and we can definitely at the end of this section see if there's any other questions there. And my apologies, I've lost my background. Don't know where it went. So jumping into this, as you heard from both John and Christiana earlier when we talked about the ledge briefing update, there has been lots of discussions over the past couple of years around policy and policy implementation, particularly as we come into our Kelvin migration waves. So the next few slides, I kind of highlighted it is dense and intense with policy. We have many changes in flight. So the prior slide was just a quick look back. January, we implemented a number of changes in our 2101 release. We are here in February, current slide. So we also have a pseudo baseline release coming up this weekend, in fact, and this is a couple of times a year, typically in February and in our June timeframes. We have coordinated releases with the Covered California project entity and CalHIS system. This is a big one. We have the expanded Medi-Cal coverage for older Californians going out in this particular release. There's some interface changes. We often do interface changes to add data elements to transfer between the source system as well as CalHIS. There's also some postpartum care expansion going in, taking that coverage from 60 days to 365 days. So that's this coming weekend. It is test complete. CalHIS has greenlit their release as of last Friday. So we are ready for those activities this coming weekend. February has been a busy month. We have already run this past weekend in both source systems. The CalFresh SSA COLA, this was kind of part 2 of that COLA. We also ran a process on our ESAP households to change the reporting requirements based on the new policy that has been implemented there. In both cases, the results have been posted out to the counties for their review. A CIT went out for each item earlier this week. Coming up next week, we still have a number of, back on the prior slide, number of changes going in. We have a one-time run that we'll do for that postpartum change. That does involve a coordination with CalHIS. So I believe on the 25th, we'll be running that one-time process to do send an EDR over to CalHIS to get the determination batch back and run batch to affect that change. We have our CalFresh emergency allotment running on the 26th of this month. Again, that's for the January benefit month to bring the households to maximum allotment there.
On the 28th, we will be doing our second phase of our safe drinking water pilot through Kern County. I hear you on the line today, Cindy. So earlier, end of January, we sent out informing notices there to the eligible recipients who met the criteria for this particular pilot. Again, this is a pilot project. So on the 28th, we will be running the second process to grant the approvals for those eligible households, and those notices of actions will go out in readiness for the pilot starting on March 1st. And then we do have some additional changes going in. One of the focus in our correspondence areas was around Spanish translations, and we have a number of forms, 40+ forms in the process of getting translations put in the system ready for deployment. Next slide. So that's just February. If we look at March, we are already in system test for our 2203 release. Again, some major changes there around, particularly in the CalWorks program. We see the time clock changes, the applicant earned income disregard is going in. There's a special needs increment that is going in as well. Plus we have, some key migration changes going in both our March release, they went in January, March, and in May, heavily focused on our GAGR programs for our 18 Kelvin counties. They are in test as well. Plus some more priority releases. So we have another COLA coming up. So FPL COLA is scheduled to run on the weekend of the 6th of March. I neglected to mention that we have already implemented the COLA values in the system. They went in around February 10. Again, we wanted to get them in before 10 day and before the April benefit month opened up, since several of those COLA values, those FPL values are effective with the April benefit month. So they're in. So this will be the batch run that we initiate for the FPL. The following weekend, as you've heard earlier from both Arnold and from Gabby, the LA County cutover to imaging and benefits CAL. So we do have system changes that need to go in to support those two cutovers. Plus the emergency allotment will run the last weekend of the month and will be, as well as deploying some more Spanish translations. So March will be busy as well. All the baseline items are in test, and most of the priority items are in test as we speak as well. April is absent of a baseline release. However, we do have priority releases planned. Again, a lot of batch activities. Again, with most of the policy changes that we're seeing right now, they do have sweeping impact across the caseload. So we are running batch on that caseload. Like most COLAs and batch changes, the goal is to have the system take the change. There is always a number of cases that need to be reviewed by the workers, and we post those out for the counties to take a look at. But by and large, we're trying to effect most of the changes through batch processes for the counties. I will pause because this is very council centric, but I did want to mention that we are working very closely with Diane and Lynn and the Kelvin team to be very mindful and intentional on doing these changes, if not the same weekend, the same time, given that we want to make sure that these policies are implemented in both systems as we run up to the wave cutovers for the migration counties. So I did just want to bring that to your attention as well, that there is a coordinated effort there with across the source systems to put these in. And then finally, May, we have a baseline release and more priority releases planned. This release is for the most part, is in development. There are a few items that we're still designing, but this release is right around the corner as well. We continue to work through as new items come up to see where they slot in. And as we head into those waves, looking at these changes through a lens of, what is the impact to conversion? We are trying to minimize those once we get past this May release, as well as, potential impacts to training. So hence it's very hectic right now, lots of changes going on. We are looking forward to getting these in the system as we head into the summer and many of the Kelvin activities around UAT and other test phases, as was described a little bit earlier when some of the risks were reviewed. I think that is my last slide. And that was a lot of words.
Thank you, Lisa.
Hopefully not too quick, Jessie.
Oh no, I think hectic is an understatement for everything that's gone on. There was a lot there. Thank you for a very meaty update. Do we have any questions from our PSC?
I have a quick question, I think, Lisa.
Yes, ma'am.
Goes back to February, but just two things. So just on the water pilot, you guys received information on the additional zip codes? Okay.
I hope someone did. I will take that back, Cindy.
We did, Cindy. Yes,
we
we
will
did.
reach out to Greg and to Martha to make sure we have that information.
Okay, great.
I just don't know off the top of my head.
Sounds like you did, and I think you did. Just making sure. Okay. And then on the just my question, it's probably, I'm sure, in the material somewhere, but on the expanded access to the older Californians, 50 and older, in that release, is that sending out notifications, or what exactly is included in that release for the older Californians?
So we're putting in the eligibility changes across the systems. I believe there is a future batch run for that, and I'm trying to look at that.
Because I know they're not it doesn't go in really until May. So
right. Yeah, there's a future batch process that I think is maybe targeted for early May, but I'll get back to you on that. So it's putting in the changes that support the eligibility. There's some notice updates that need to go in before the May timeframe.
And I'm sure it's in the release material, and I'll look for it there. But thank you.
Yeah, it's just trying to get it in early enough so that when they're running the May 1st, running the May benefits, that information is there, is why it ends up going in March a little earlier than you would expect.
All right. Yeah. Thank you.
I wanted to note that just kudos and just such great news on the release of information, and what a great relief that's going to be, not just for our assisters, but also for our eligibility workers, especially those who work in the call centers, because that's such a huge piece for them to be able to even communicate with the sisters, as having that ROI and having that easily accessible. So that is just great news. I wasn't clear on the last piece around the two-way messaging and enhanced chat. It says 4.0. So when exactly is that going to come in? That's a few slides up. I think it's the first slide. I don't think it was Rachel who covered that.
I will. Yeah. So that will come in July. Release 4.0 is scheduled for July.
Thank you. And the Spanish translation of forms, that's also such great news. Very welcome news for counties. I heard 40 forms. Was that only 40 forms in February, or 40 total? I saw that there were some that would be translated in February and some also in March. I think that was Lisa.
Yes, ma'am, I was speaking on mute. So right now we have about 43 forms in state forms in system test targeted for February, pending the completion of testing. We have about 6 or 7 more in March, along with about 6 or 7 notices of action.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, do we have any more questions or comments from PSC on this item? Lots happening. All right, do we have any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we can move on to the next item. I think this is Holly. Hi, Holly.
Yes. Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Just a quick update on the CalSAWS IAPDU, the Implementation Advanced Planning document. So we submitted the update on January 31st. That kicks in a 30-day state review and approval process. So that'll continue through March 2nd. And in support of that review, we did conduct a walkthrough with our state partners last week to review the budget changes, answer any initial questions that they might have. And then we received formal comments and questions this morning that we're reviewing and we'll be addressing. So once we get those comments addressed, and then we receive approval from the state, we move into the 60-day federal review and approval process for a target approval in early May. So I've noted a few changes that we included in this year's funding request on this slide, just to give you a sample of what we've included. We did put in funding for vendor transition. That's related to the reprocurement of M&O services. And I know Tom's going to give an update on the procurement efforts in the next topic, but we are already planning for that to occur in a future year. We have looked at rebaselining our consortium personnel staff loading and staff costs, as well as other routine updates for hardware, software. We did include a request for benefits Cal M&E, so that's to assist in addressing some of the backlog, and that's separate from the ARPA funding that was just mentioned earlier. We also included some hours to support vendor integration as it relates to CalWin ISS, where we need some more functional and technical support in certain areas of the system, and also to provide environment support for testing of business processes. So those are some of the examples of the changes. And so once the IAPDU is approved, the updates then filter into your county allocations as appropriate. And then, of course, we'll share updates with the county fiscal SMEs and through that forum. That's the update for today. So I'll pause here for questions.
Thank you, Holly. Do you have any questions from PSC on the IAPDU? Do we have any public comment? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Holly. Next item is procurement. Tom? Hi, Tom.
Yeah. Hi, Jesse. How are you?
Oh, wow.
The first page we have here summarizes the responses we got from our request for the vendors to review the requirements infrastructure, the M&E descriptions, the statements of work, and the M&E statement of work. So we also, so this is just a numerical summary. We're treating the comments as working papers, so they will be considered for inclusion into our procurement strategy when the procurement advisory work group meets in toward the end of February. Next slide. So these, just for your information, are the 7 questions that we asked each of the vendors, the 5 that responded, to include their perspective on each of these. And we got some very interesting input, and many of them will be used to make our RFP and our statements of work better, and to address some of the complexities of having a multi-vendor environment that we're experiencing now and will experience in the future. Next. Here's our current schedule, and everything is moving along according to schedule. Once again, we did give the vendors an additional 2 weeks over the holidays to give us their input on the 7 questions and the SOW and requirements reviews. Next. And then this is the last set of schedule items, and shows that the proposals are due November 7 of 2022. And we're going to work through with the procurement advisory work group the detailed structure that we've been working on, given the input from the vendor community and from our state sponsors. And that's the procurement update. Back to you, Jesse.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions or comments from PSC on procurement? Do we have any public comment? Okay, I think we're ready for item number 15. I think that's June and Wendy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the interaction that we've been having today. I think it's been good to have the back and forth and the, lots of questions coming in from our PSC members. So we'd like to kind of continue that and have a little bit of conversation about how you all think that the January JPA member representative conference went. So we know that the format of that conference is doesn't necessarily lend itself, and the amount of material that's shared in that conference doesn't really lend itself to a lot of interaction and a lot of conversation with the attendees. So we'd really like to reflect on that meeting, get your feedback, and ask you a few questions about how you perceive that meeting and how we could do things a little bit better. So the first question is, what stood out in your mind from the January 27th JPA Member Representative Conference? Was there anything that was a highlight? Anything that you thought was a great takeaway that you might have taken back to your staff in the county from that meeting?
Hi, June, it's Cindy. Are you wanting us to just hop in and say something now, or are you waiting for later comments?
No, absolutely. We'd love for this to be interactive.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't want to jump in before it was time. So on the first question, actually, I really applaud how the videos and everything ran really smoothly. I mean, everything queued up correctly, it seemed like. And so I just thought that was it was really well done, I thought, and flowed really smoothly, and got it all in time, even though I know there was like a crunch at the end. Usually is, because there's always so much information to share. But the videos, I think, were very well done, and I thought they were very informative. So to me, that stood out.
Thank you so much. And you're welcome to provide your input in the chat as well. Wendy's here, she's keeping track of that as also. So thank you for that, Cindy.
Hi, June. One thing that, just echoing what Cindy shared, and just the level of thought and having the theme, I think really ties everything together. So I know that's not easy to have like a huge project. Just having the theme was really important, so that carries on. And again, the quality of the presentations, just breaking it up and not having death by PowerPoint, so to speak. So this was actually a nice touch.
Hey, thank you, Jesse. Okay, we can move on to the next question. This is kind of our questions that's a little bit like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, or really it's a PSC and the bear and the deer, and I think that's a fox. I'm not sure if it's a fox or a squirrel, but this next question is a little bit like that. What was there too much of something, too little, something, too hard, too soft, just right about the information that we shared? Did you wish there was a little bit more of something and a little bit less of anything else?
And we realized that we covered a lot of ground in that meeting. So again, was it too much? Was it too little?
I can probably share what I've heard from our executives. I think it's the challenge of having a very varied audience. And I think for someone like me who's very close to operations and hearing that, a lot of this, and we also talk about it at PSC, that's to me. Yet I think for some of our executives who may really appreciate a little bit more like the global picture, I think some of that was very challenging, and it really went long. So I think that's the part of just like how it is Goldilocks, June. You make sure that you are being transparent with the information, and again, echoing also what I'm seeing in the chat too, like the interaction. So that balance of like, how is it took so much information, and to maximize the use of our county executives' time being there.
Thank you, Jesse. And thank you for those that put information in the chat.
This is Ethan from Region 2. I really did like the layout and format, but I also wonder if maybe it could be set up in a 2-day format, because that would give you more interaction and not, there was a point in time, and I tend to be blunt, so I don't want anybody to be offended. There was a couple of spots where I kind of felt like I was a kid being put in front of a TV and being babysat by electronics. The information was really good, but it really did, and I'll agree with Jesse, it depended on who was there to absorb the info. So maybe it should be either a couple of days so you can have that interaction and not such a long singular meeting.
Okay, thank you, thank you. We appreciate that feedback. And if we take that and move on to our question number 3, right? We always want to improve. We want to meet your needs and provide the information needed. And as Jesse pointed out, use your time and our JPA members and all of our county directors' time wisely with the time that we have with them. So is there anything in particular that you would really like to see more of, or you'd like to see a presentation on as we begin planning our June 23rd, 2022 member representative conference? Because this one is generally an all-day session as well. Normally, pre-COVID times, it was a bit of a day and a half in-person conference, but we're not able to do that. So how can we best maximize your time and give you the information that you may be really interested in the June meeting? And given the feedback that we've gotten about, maybe breaking it up a bit.
Hi, this is Cindy, and I just had a thought about the interactive process and all that. I'm wondering if you could enlist the help of some volunteers in the counties. Maybe some CalWin counties would want to participate and talk about how things are going. So you would get maybe more of a county perspective and participation from those counties. Maybe some former C4 counties would want to talk about how it's been almost a year and how it's going, or maybe something like that, maybe some tips of the trade and tricks. And so, yeah, maybe like more other presenters or participants, maybe other than project, possibly. Not saying that it's bad to have, but just to get that maybe personal touch.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that.
I think another thing I've heard that our directors frequently ask us is, the bottom line questions around what does this mean for our clients? What does this mean for our budget? What does this mean for our staff? What does this mean for labor? So I don't know if there may need to maybe a need to segment certain things to have that really bottom line answers for those individuals, and then having sessions for the people, because you have some executives who do like to go into the weeds and really understand what goes behind making the sausage. And then you have the people who are just happy to see the thing that's already done and understand what the impacts are. I think just having that choice point alleviates some of this feeling of I'm being put in front of something and I'm just being kind of spoon-fed a lot of information that for a lot of folks who are not in this world all the time, it may be a little overwhelming.
Thank you, Jesse. I think that's a really interesting way to maybe think about how we can also format how we, and I don't want to, solve the problem here, but how we can format these future meetings and have kind of that barometer on each slide to say, here's the impact to staff, here's the impact, if any, to the customers, on some of these topics, to kind of give that bottom line, this is what you should be looking out for, kind of thing. So that's an interesting suggestion. I think we might be able to do something with that for sure.
I wonder, because CalSAWS has been great about capturing analytics, is maybe send out a survey to directors and our subordinate staff and say, what do you, kind of like what CWDA was, what do you guys want to see? And then narrow down the topics from there, and then maybe have breakout sessions based on that on a reserve basis. That way you're not setting up a room that only has 2 people in. So maybe it's changing the interaction through Zoom, because much like you, I think we're going to be here for a little bit longer. But maybe just a change in the interaction and really get a focus on what do people want to see.
Yeah, thank you.
And I was going to add, I know part of the meeting is dedicated to the voting and all of that. And so, and I know part of that is you've got the directors on the call, so you just keep the information, the informational part of the meeting. So I don't know if there is a better way to try and capture the voting maybe outside the conference or prior to, or somehow, I don't know if there's a better way to do that, to kind of take up that time so that it's not, you don't have that first part of the meeting just on that, where a lot of people aren't participating in certain segments, and then maybe, have the general part of it somehow kick off. So I don't know, just a thought. I don't know how, I don't know what that is, because I know it's good to, once you have them captured, then you start providing the information, but that does take up a good part of the meeting.
Yeah, Cindy, I'll take that because we have to do that for business, but I know that's probably the least interesting part
Yeah.
of the meeting. So we'll take an action item and loop back with council. Jen and I have done that a number of times, loop back with council on, can we do another way of capturing votes and things like that? Thus far, the answer has been no. That's what a public meeting's about. Those are official votes. Those are representatives of the counties.
Could it be like, I think Ethan was suggesting, or maybe you break it up and maybe this is the voting part, and then you take a little break, and then maybe you move into the informational part or something. But I know
I think so. I think we can look at a better way of doing that, maybe acknowledging the votes. A 58 county roll call is pretty boring to get through.
And you did a great job this time. I mean, I think it was very smooth actually, but it does take that time.
But in June, at the June meeting, we're going to probably have a couple more of those, especially with the votes for PSC representation, JPA, officers, those types of things. So let us take that back, see if there's any way that we can not violate any public meeting rules, but sort of streamline that so we can get through that and bust that up a little bit, because the big thing is getting to the content, and if we have breakout rooms and things like that. So challenge accepted, but we have to always balance that with what the business is and public meeting rules. So we'll try to take another run at that in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for all the feedback. I think, we do have some technical challenges, even with the technology is available for breakout rooms with Zoom, and you may have all been doing it in some of the CWDA meetings. It's working great, but how do we balance that with the need for it to be a public meeting? And so yeah, I think that's great. We do appreciate all of your feedback. You're welcome to continue to provide more in the chat if you think of things. And then after this meeting, it is really helpful if you also send anything you might think of through your RMs so that we can get that feedback back into the project. Wendy, anything else? Anyone?
No, but if you do, you think of something as we go through the rest of the meeting, just if you can tag something in chat that says feedback dash, and then that way we'll be able to grab it. We won't think you're responding to something else, this other conversation that's happening. That'll be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Back to you, Jessie.
Thank you so much, June and Wendy, and just really appreciate the spirit of continuous improvement, even in things such as our meetings. So that was a conversation dialogue with our project steering committee members. Just one last call for PSC if there's any additional comments. Okay. Do we have any public comment on this item? Okay, I think we're ready to move on to QA with Dan.
Before we turn it over to Dan, I think these next two agenda items, QA, hearing from Dan and his management of the QA team, plus our state partners over at OSI and their IV&V independent verification and validation vendor, that making sure that both our QA team and our IV&V team had direct line of sight with our PSC as well as our JPA, because they both are your resources, and making sure that there's time to be able to have time with you as PSC during these monthly sessions. So Dan, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Dan.
Perfect, thank you. So let me just start in advance by saying QA was asked to provide an update, which we're of course happy to do. I apologize in advance that some of the information on these slides may look repetitive. QA is embedded throughout the project on all work streams with all delivery partners on the project. So many of the things in our update have been covered by some of our earlier speakers. I'll do my best to skim over the topics that were covered by others and focus on net new information. Mostly I want to allow for time for questions at the end as well. So we've put our presentation together really in 3 areas, 3 work streams. The first being LA cutover, the second being CalWIN Go Live, and then we're going to close with regular maintenance and operations of the CalSAWS production system. So starting with slide 1 here, our march for Los Angeles, our target of working towards a Los Angeles cutover in March. One of the things that QA is working across through all partners is a single set of go live materials across imaging with Highland, Benefits Cal with Deloitte, and CalSAWS with Accenture, working with county and consortium on the test and verification activities. We had our T-4 meeting this past Monday. We'll have T-3 next Tuesday, and targeting a March 9th go live. We're working to present the evidence that those stakeholders need to make the right decision, as well as involving ourselves from an independent test perspective. The performance topic here has been covered in quite a bit of detail by both Arnold and Luz and Greg. My add would be that we recognize that the load testing was at 150%, which is over double the predicted volume of what's going to be required for LA Go Live. There were some tuning opportunities identified right at about the 130% barrier. So those things are being logged and planned for the CalWIN Go Live waves. What I would add is that we're also looking at the updates to the system that are being made to assist with finding documents in the exception queues and to minimize the amount of documents that go to those exception queues. And there's really multiple angles on this. The solution itself is designed to get smarter on a document as it processes larger volumes of data over time. This is going to take some time to present itself. And in other words, as it sees more and more documents, it can recognize that that's a driver's license or a social security card. But enhancements are put in place to help find the documents, as well as changes and updates to the process to minimize what goes through OCR to begin with. There's also a county best practices CIT that's been put in place and communicated to the C4 counties. And we are, as QA, are tracking that also goes out from both an LA communication as well as the CalWIN, for each of the CalWIN waves as they go live, sending it out earlier right before each wave. And then my closeout on the imaging side is there is a list of both enhancements and defects that many of them are being implemented in February. There will be a list of things there typically is slated for post go live, and that will need to be reviewed and approved. As Arnold stated, the priority 1 stuff has to be resolved, so it's being transparent about what else is out there and hasn't been signed off. So that's pretty much the right side of things on imaging for LA. On the left there for Benefits Cal, we've been monitoring as the teams are working towards their march to go live, a confirmation of the go live date. Arnold did mention that the March 14th date was a target. As that date gets finalized, communication needs to go out to CBOs and existing users of Your Benefits Now, as well as a final training session to be scheduled. And then there was some functional differences recognized. And one example with YBN would be its interpretation of SAR7 processing and how LA interpreted that versus what was in Benefits Cal at Go Live for CalSAWS. That was quickly reconciled over the past 2 weeks with clarification from the state. So there is an enhancement going in to process that with the logic that's currently in YBN that works well for the other CalSAWS counties as well. Finally, we are doing independent testing across Benefits Cal, and about half of our independently tested identified defects have been resolved, and we're working through the balance of those fixes as we get closer to March, and it'll be part of our statistics in the Go Live document. Any questions on the LA slide before I go on to Calwin?
Hey, Dan?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is Sandra Bolin. I wanted to ask, in the past, when we moved over from C4 to CalSauce, we had some help from LA County as well. We had some reps come out and assist us. Will we be coordinating those efforts for them as well?
You're asking it from,
if they need any assistance, since we've already transitioned to CalSauce, so that they have a smoother transition.
I'm going to phone a friend here to see if anybody has an input on that. Otherwise, we can take it as an action item and follow up.
Yeah, Sandra, I think the answer to that is that strategy we think works very well. Counties helping counties is always, I think, one of the most effective ways, especially counties that are already up on the system. So I think one of the things that came out, and if I'm tracking right on your question, that June spoke of at the membership meeting was the Buddy County program, and how to set that up as we go forward to be able to do that. So I think that's something that the regional managers are leading within each one of the regions and starting to get that pulled together as a strategy going forward. And I'd look, June, if you wanted to add in anything else on that, or else Sandra, if I didn't hit your question directly, but it is a strategy that we want to employ.
Yeah, I think that's I think it's great teamwork. And I will leave it up to our Region 6 representatives today, or the RMs, to follow up on that and to see if they are, if they are looking forward to having maybe some help, or phone a friend on tap from another county to assist them during their go live. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I just thought, since LA County came out to Riverside to help us out, and if there was any help that was needed, just to let us know so we can coordinate the efforts.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. We appreciate that, and we'll check in with the RMs here and get some feedback on that if something's not already in the works.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, I think we're on to the next slide. Specific to Calwin, the first two bullets here talk about conversion and project and county readiness. These map roughly to areas that Greg and Rachel covered. They were talking about data, system, and organization readiness. So there's been quite a bit of significant discussion here about CDT, county data test. The goal is to run UAT with a converted data test, and that converted data test is due to complete on April 29th. There is a risk out there. It's probably our most actively managed risk, 263, specific to the resolution rate of converted data test defects. The challenge is, as the defects are fixed and however quickly those things are turned around, you also need the data extract to go with it. GDS there stands for Golden Data Set, and that is planned for March 29th, GDS 6, where several of these fixes will be in there. So there's a challenge where the team is still testing in the lower environments, as you heard from Greg, to increase the sort of fix confirmation before it's confirmed in the data set itself. So we are aligned with the teams and involved in those activities as well from a confirmation perspective. From a project readiness perspective, one of the top things that we're monitoring is the development of GAGR, both the rules and correspondence. There's a large amount of functionality going out in the next two releases, 2203 and 2205. There's significant coordination between Gainwell and Accenture, and that functionality, of course, does need to be there for Calwin Wave 1, as those counties are going to be relying on that solution. Los Angeles already has their GAGR in place. And And then finally, from a county readiness perspective or organization readiness, we are embedded with the Kelvin ISS team, the implementation support team, working through tasks and timeframes to confirm they're understood by the counties, that the counties are getting the answers that they need, as well as working with the counties and the ISS support team on the level of detail in supporting materials like those change discussion guides. On the imaging front related to organization readiness across the 18 counties of Kelvin, there's really about a dozen different legacy imaging systems for scan, capture, and document management. So in our weekly status report now, I'm saying we, the project, it happens to be in the DDI side of the status report, are monitoring those county imaging activities that are required to assist with the conversion of those images. There's an extract process that has to occur, and working through with each of those counties by wave, the types of challenges they faced in getting to resolution, things like how they map the fields, any hardware environment support, or support from their legacy vendors in helping to create the extracts. Finally, there are those things over which the project has limited control, but good risk management suggests you talk about them in advance so they can run through models and decide how you're going to react to them if they happen. Over the past 2 years, we have had to react to fires and COVID, and how might that impact go live dates, and what flexibility do we have, and how can we support the counties if those things arise. Next slide, please. From a UAT perspective, I think most of this has been covered. We're working towards a UAT that will be starting in May. It will be a 43 county data set, and working through models of how we can enhance that to still allow the wave 2 through 6 counties to test with their data as part of county data validation. Those processes are being added and process simulation before each wave as well as testing GAGR functionality for UAT. It'll be there, the data will be there for the wave 1 counties, the rules and correspondence will be there for all counties. So making sure that wave 2 through 6 counties who are participating in UAT have the help and assistance to set up their offices, and so that they can set up their cases and run their scenarios for GAGR as well. And it might also be an option that they can use case copy to copy over data from wave counties to do what they would like to do as part of UAT, and then also supporting converted data validation prior to go live. From a performance and operations perspective, a lot of that's been covered. We are in weekly meetings with the batch team, which is one of the top areas. There's also online and analytics and reporting. But from a batch perspective, the team has prioritized really 6 top priority areas, from the front end of the batch stream and super triggers to the middle, with form rendering and encryption, to reports ingestion at the back end. The challenge is, as one process gets faster, it can actually create conflict with other areas that it didn't used to run with before. So there can be a bit of a whack-a-mole effect that we've seen in the past. Our motto here is to fail fast, test early, fail fast, rinse and repeat, and get things to where they need to be. As Greg said, they are modeling for about 1.5 hours of savings, and we're working towards that goal together. And on contingency planning, there is a number of risks out there that were covered earlier in this meeting. There's an overarching risk, number 268, which sort of pulls them all together and sets triggers dates of how they impact each other. So for example, the converted data test risk would need to be resolved by April 29th in order to be ready for May 1st UAT. Other things like performance management, there's going to be tuning opportunities through August. I'll pause here on Kelvin. My next slide is M&O, and then I'm done. Any questions related to that material? Okay, we'll go on to M&O, please. Last but not least. While QA is almost everywhere in the project, we really work to focus on the most important things. Ideally, we want to be proactive. One of the areas we're able to do that best is in the general releases, 2203, 2205, 2209. We work with a consortium to prioritize the areas where independent test scripts should be created and resolved. But we also work when issues arise to understand root cause and how we can do things better. An example of that would be the imaging discussion we had earlier, where there was an issue that arose early last week related to searching of documents resulting from the data restore in January. We were able to go through our test conditions of what we had done back then, what we had verified, and learn that this was something unique to the solution. Had a follow-up discussion with Highland and Accenture partners. And again, I title this as, it can be hard to find a needle in a haystack, but show us your needle so we can inspect it together. It allows us all to be more proactive. The priority releases are a little bit more over the shoulder. As those go out, we work to observe what's going on and also confirm where necessary in the priority releases. Central print, we're involved in security reviews. And in the area of connectivity with EBT, APIs, those types of things, I'm talking about operations now. We are working with the teams on issues as those arise and how the project can be informed when things are not up and available. Even if it's not something they can control, we can get that information out to the counties earlier so that they can hear from the project instead of the other way around. And I think pretty much everything else here related to release and performance has been discussed. So I'm going to pause and allow space for any other questions.
Thank you, Dan. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat and not hearing any folks pipe up. Appreciate the focus on how QA has really interwoven in all aspects of the project as we roll out different waves of migration. So thank you for walking us through it.
Thank you.
Do we have any other, so I've already asked for comments from our PSC and didn't hear any public comment on this item. Okay, thank you. I think we're ready to move on to item 17, update on key state IV and V activities.
Okay, next slide, please. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kaylee Lyman. I'm from the IV&V team. We just have one slide to go over. So the IV&V team is focusing our efforts on the 6 primary work streams that are displayed on the slide. Within each work stream listed are the key activities that our team has determined as being critical to the completion and success for each work stream. The core of IV&V's time and effort is spent on reviewing relevant project documentation, work products, deliverables, attending key meetings and work sessions, monitoring the development status and testing progress. That does include the defects resolution and assessing the development of and the performance against any risk mitigation strategies. For the first work stream, that's imaging stability and performance. Some of the key activities our team is monitoring includes the project working to resolve the imaging production defects and the ongoing performance tests that is using the 58 county load. I know that's been discussed earlier by Arnold. IV&V is looking for that quick turnaround on identified issues and improved county communications. And that's also been discussed earlier, but we are tracking those items and looking to stay on top of the monitoring of those. Second area is the Los Angeles County cutover, which includes the imaging and benefits cal move for Los Angeles. IV&V is monitoring the UAT results and preparation activities, including the communications towards the March go live date. The third area is CalWIN converted data testing and the defect resolution, risk mitigation activities, and resolution of the defects as a part of the upcoming golden data sets. The fourth area is batch performance and the improvements to scale batch up to the 58 county level, and the maintaining of the 10-hour window as batch does scale up. The fifth area is CalWIN implementation readiness. I know that's been discussed quite a bit on this call, and how the CalWIN counties are preparing to move from CalWIN to CalSAWS. IVNV is monitoring and reviewing the UAT planning and preparation activities, county communication, change discussion guides, and the implementation checklists for the CalWIN counties. The final area is that IVNV is continuously focusing on the ongoing development and implementation of CalSAWS and Benefits Cal functionality and the post-implementation support. Finally, in addition to the above work streams, the IVNV team continually monitors the project's risk and issue management process and the project's progress against risk mitigation strategies. That's the update from the IVNV team. I will pause to see if anybody has any questions for IVNV.
Thank you, Kayleen. Do we have any questions or comments from PSC? Okay. Do we have any public comment? Okay. Not hearing none. Thank you, Kayleen.
Thank you.
I think at this point, we are now at item 18, state partners updates. Do we have anyone from OSI? Okay. Anyone from CDSS here today?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Brittany Blake from CDSS. I'm going to go ahead and get the updates today.
Hello,
Just
Brittany.
a couple of them. Hi. So we're continuing to do work with EBT fraud and theft, including planning for new issuance of EBT cards to EBT card holders, sorry. And then we continue working on policy implementation efforts along with working with our language services team and the Benefits Cal team on language translation efforts. And then we also just wanted to give a thank you to CalSAWS and CalWIN for their partnership on providing text messaging to clients for each month regarding the EBT scamming. So that's all for today.
Thank you, Brittany. Anyone from DHCS?
Hi, good afternoon. This is Katie Mead from DHCS. I have a few updates. The first one, DHCS has issued a couple of ACWDLs within the last week. Excuse me. The first one is ACWDL 22-03, which is the 2022 federal poverty levels. That was issued last week on February 9th. ACWDL 22-04, treatment of certain public health emergency assistance payments for Medi-Cal eligibility. It's a long one. That was issued last Friday on February 11th, 2022. DHCS has also revised the over income notice snippets related to the SB 260 implementation, which was delivered to SAWS in all threshold languages on February 1st. On January 10th, 2022, Governor Newsom released the proposed budget for fiscal year 22-23. The budget includes a proposal to reduce premiums for the following programs: the 250% working disabled program, the optional targeted low income children's program, otherwise known as OTLICP, the Medi-Cal Access Program, or MCAP, Medi-Cal Access Infant Program, or MCAPE, and the County Children's Health Insurance Program, CCHIP, 2.0, for all beneficiaries enrolled in these programs with an effective date of July 1st, 2022. This has not been approved as of yet. DHCS is currently working on editing the premium snippets provided by both CalSAWS and CalWIN. A combined 250% working disabled and CHIP programs. ACWDL is pending release. DHCS did send a draft to SAWS, and there was a walkthrough or a conversation yesterday regarding that draft ACWDL. The last thing I have is the postpartum care extension, excuse me, PCE was authorized by the American Rescue Plan Act, otherwise known as ARPA, and will expand the postpartum coverage period an additional 10 months of coverage following their 60-day postpartum period for a total postpartum period of 12 months. The PCE period will end on the last day of the month in which the 365th day falls. ARPA the PCE, the postpartum care extension, is scheduled to be implemented on April 1st, 2022. DHCS has published a provider bulletin and has shared policy guidance in ACWDL 2115, as well as MEDL 21-13. An errata to MEDL 21-13 is in review and will be providing additional information and scenarios based on questions received from SAS. DHCS will also provide an ARPA PCE flyer, which is in ADA compliance review, and DHCS is expecting before the end of this month for distribution. That is all I have. I will pause to see if there's any questions.
Katie, this is John Boulay. You mentioned a number of changes that would be going in, would come into effect in July of 2022, but those are in the pending budget that wouldn't get it approved until probably the May-June timeframe.
Correct.
And if any of those have automation impacts from the time approved to the time being implemented, that's less than a month, and there still has to be final policy put in place on that. I might not be tracking right, but that math doesn't add up to me.
You are correct. And we have been working with Kelvin as well as CalSAWS to look at this change. Specifically yesterday, it was discussed at length with both systems to march towards that July 1st, 2022 date. There isn't, from what we understood yesterday, and please, whoever's there that was there yesterday, keep me honest. It looks like at this point, it would be a reference table update based on what both SAWs had said. And so we are working, we are coordinating those meetings with Kelvin and CalSAWS to march towards that effective date.
Thanks. And I just want to be clear, if any of those items we're trying to get them in because there's a July implementation date, of course, we're going to do what we can. But if it does impact county operations or there's a county workaround, those conversations need to happen with the counties, because we cannot talk about really or assess the ability to do workarounds, because the operations are the county's responsibility. So we want to make sure that that holistic conversation takes place in that time. And just because we might be able to do a quick item that has a workaround doesn't mean that the counties will be able to absorb that workaround as part of their operations.
Completely understood. And thank you for bringing that forward. We will definitely take that back, or we will make sure that we are aware of that with the future conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie.
Okay. Hey,
John,
this is Neha
and this
Delvin
is-
from OSI.
sorry.
Hello?
Sorry, this is
Hello?
Michelle. I was just gonna, if I could add some feedback to what Katie just said, just so that those on the call know. We have been discussing with DHCS, and from a CalSAWS perspective, to reduce the premiums for the 250% working disabled is a small change. We have communicated to DHCS, we wouldn't be able to make any notice changes, but by reducing the premium to zero, it would naturally update the NOAA to like, you have zero premium. And so we're working on a timeline with Kelvin. Our timeline will include a batch process to run these cases to reduce that premium to zero, so the counties won't have a workaround or need to do anything manually. The children's programs, the premium reduction does not have any impact to CalSAWS because that's not managed within CalSAWS. That's over Maximus, or CalHERS, and I may be saying that wrong, manages that workload. So we wouldn't have any workload for that at this point. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that.
I just wanted to acknowledge that there is an OSI status that is in the chat. So just wanted to recognize OSI has provided their status, and I think Nia is having some challenges with their mic. So do we have any questions? And I'm hoping folks can read the chat for the OSI update. Any questions or comments from PSC? All right, do we have any public comment on the state partners updates? Okay, Not hearing any, we're moving forward with regional updates. So at this point, I am going to request Region 6. Let's go backwards. Start with Region 6 with their updates.
Good afternoon. For Region 6, we're just continuing to looking to hire additional eligibility workers to support our operations. And that's pretty much the main thing that we have going on right now. And looking also to expand our call centers.
Thank you. Anyone else from Region 6? Okay, not hearing any, I think we move on to Region 5.
Hi, Jesse. James Lacerda, Region 5. Thank you. A couple quick updates, starting with Riverside County. They have onboarded 143 eligibility workers who started Medi-Cal and CalFresh in-person instruction on February 10th. They plan on hiring an additional 140 from March to May. Community outreach vans continue to progress forward. They would like to get those on the road and out to their rural communities very soon. They rolled out a new workload model in 2 different pilot offices in the month of February. It is the unified processing with accurate results and determinations. Upward model's goal is to streamline processes, consistency, and equity in work distribution. For San Bernardino, a couple updates on the automated assistance for the authentication automated assistant, and these percentages are for the period of February 7th through the 14th. There was an 87% success rate for authenticating. The welcome automated assistant was at 71%. Success rate for the intent. The push notification was at 12%. 12% of callers ended the call post the push notification. And San Bernardino also welcomed their first onboarding class for 2022. They had a class of eligibility workers and employment services specialists that started on January 31st. And then the last update is for San Diego, and San Diego has started their BPR2B sessions. That concludes the update for Region 5. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, James. Region 4. Any representatives from Region 4?
Hi, sorry, it's Cindy.
Hi, Cindy.
The backwards thing threw me. Okay, I'm doing the updates. Thank you for Region 4 today. So from Fresno, they report that their Eves RCM has retired from Fresno County after being with Fresno County for 28 years. So that's a long time, and her expertise and knowledge will be missed. Also, they filled a CalFresh program specialist vacancy with Sandy Moore. Sandy Moore also has 31 years employment with Fresno County. And she's a new Region 4 SME in the CalSAWS committees, CalWorks, CalFresh, time limits, and correspondence. And they also report out that they're preparing for their upcoming BPR 2B session scheduled for March and April. In Kern, we have reopened our Delano office. It was closed due to that fire in the office. And so we've now reopened it, and it's reopened to customers as well. We have some CalFresh outreach grants that we're working on to get out into the communities. And so we're working on purchasing all of the equipment for that. We also had a training class that will graduate and we'll get out on the floor. We're trying hard to fill all of our vacancies in eligibility. And then we also are in the process of our business process in re-engineering with the Change and Innovation Agency, and their design sessions went through this week. In Mariposa, their director stepped down from her position, and they have a new acting director who is Joe Lynch, and he will be the interim director of the HHSA. They also are working on their agency's strategic plan and system of care approach with staff. They provided eligibility staff with a mini training on CalFresh waivers during one of the meetings. They also are filling a couple of positions, an eligibility specialist and a system support analyst position. And they say that their lobby is remaining fully open to the public. Telework continues for those staff members that are able to, and staffing as everywhere, probably staffing continues to be a challenge as the rise in the COVID cases. In San Joaquin, They have also been working through the issue of staff not being able to work due to the Omicron variant. They are continuing to have telecommute during the quarantine as much as possible, so continue to work and process eligibility cases. They are also reviewing their lobby practices, so when they are able to fully reopen, they would like to possibly expand their kiosk use. And so they have one at this time, but would like to add a couple more so their customers can upload documents without having to wait in line at a lobby window. So they're hoping to reduce their lobby flow and encouraging the use of Benefits Cal. They also have 32 eligibility trainings in staff development, hoping to have them back on the line, and are looking at another 35 in July as they also continue to struggle with high caseloads. In San Luis Obispo, they have several efforts going on preparing for migration, and this includes cleaning up and mapping forms in their imaging system. They have 4 work groups exploring functionality that was not previously used in their county. They have a learning community of staff gathering each week to explore the CalSAWS sandbox. And they have restructured their participant services division to move things around, added a divisional manager, expanding the role of their employment resource specialist. And all offices will be moving to integrated case management for consistency across their county. And they also had a new class that just graduated of 14. In Stanislaus, they are working again at reducing the number of staff in their buildings due to the COVID-19 Omicron surge. This plan is a hybrid model to ensure staff are in the office and serving the customers coming into the building. They also continue to experience low staffing levels due to the variant, and they are implementing temporary changes to staff assignment and processes. They also hired new trainees, and as a result, 30 new trainees were scheduled to start February 14th. They had some CalSAWS imaging demonstration as a mandatory training for their users, and they created a CalSAWS troubleshooting guide to have as reference prior to submitting the trouble ticket. In Tulare, they continue to discuss and redefine their CalSAWS 2B processes while simultaneously working with the Change and Innovation Agency. They are preparing for their CalSAWS Contact Center BPR to start in February. They also continue to be impacted by staffing issues due to COVID-19. They have one office that has been closed due to building and maintenance issues, and staff are continue to be relocated to other offices until those issues are resolved. And they also continue to work with Intelligy to finalize a new telework policy. And that's it for things happening in Region 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Region 3, Rachel?
This is Rachel. I'm Region 3. So I did receive some updates from some of our counties. Butte County is reporting that they have a new training class, eligibility training class started on the 7th of this month. And they also opened a new satellite office in Paradise. Humboldt County also reports that they are opening a new outstation office called the Center in McKinleyville, and they are anticipating to have that staffed in March. Lake County reported that they are just wrapping up a large induction class, which for our small counties, a large induction class is 17 to 18 eligibility workers. Mendocino County, we just finished a employment and training worker class this week, and last week we started a new eligibility induction training class. Shasta County is reporting that they have a new deputy director who started on the 14th, just this week, Jonathan Taylor, and he does have a background in eligibility. They also began a training class on the 31st of January. Siskiyou County reports a new deputy director in their fiscal department. They've also started a new continuous recruitment for eligibility worker and have hired a new project manager and supervisor for their housing programs. Tehama County is working towards a continuous recruitment for eligibility worker, and they are also celebrating Eligibility Worker Appreciation Week. Trinity County has reported out that they were just granted the Housing and Disability Advocacy Program, the Housing Disability Advocacy Program funding, and they will begin administering that program soon. And that is it for our Region 3 updates this month.
Thank you, Rachel. Region 2.
Good afternoon, Ethan Dye, Region 2. Our region, we have a variety of hiring, a variety of transitioning back to telework. Some of our counties are opening lobbies, some are reducing a little bit. On the hiring note, El Dorado reports Michelle Ray has been promoted to Deputy Director. And for YOLO, Nolan Sullivan has been appointed as the interim in YOLO County. And Tanya Provencher will be the interim director over service centers and will be my new Region 2 PSC backup. Other than that, I will give it to Region 1.
Thank you, Ethan. Clarissa, are you still on the line?
I am. Good
Hi.
afternoon, everybody. Last one before we head out. Okay, really quickly, Monterey County, the majority of staff work on a hybrid work week now with 4 days working from home and 1 day in the office, at least until their COVID numbers begin to decrease. Some staff who do not work directly with the public are working from home full time. Their offices, though, have remained open to customers. The customers are encouraged, if they can, to call and schedule a telephone interview, use Benefits Cal to apply, or drop off verifications at the kiosks where they have a reception staff always available. In Santa Cruz and Solano counties, they're completing their BPR 2B sessions this week. San Mateo is in progress with our BPR sessions. We will complete those sessions on March 4th. Contra Costa began with their IPOC, TPOC monthly meetings this month. Jesse will do the rest of our Region 1 updates.
Okay, thank you, Clarissa. County is hosting 7 CalWIN counties in the month of February to demo how to use the kiosk. Alameda is meeting with, or has met with the ISS training team to review and discuss the identified training roles for Alameda County, CalSAWS training and draft of training schedule for input and validation. And San Francisco, in response to the Omicron surge, they went back to 100% telecommuting in December, and with current plans to return to hybrid on-premise schedule on March 7. And they are also participating in round 2 of the CalSAWS Innovation Shark Tank Challenge with the objective of using proactive communication to reduce CalFresh churn. And for Marin, our update is that we did return to our hybrid schedule of twice a week in the office now that the COVID numbers are looking better in Marin. Our offices have been open the entire time, and I think a new win for Marin County is we secured board approval for our home key project as a to address some of the issues with homelessness in Marin County. So that ends Region 1 updates. Are there any comments or questions from our PSC on any of those updates? Do we have any public comment? Okay, so we are at 4:27. John, is there anything else? I think we're at the end of our agenda.
Masterful job facilitating. I think right up 3 minutes to spare.
Yes, yes. We are very efficient and effective in here. Covered a lot of ground, and thank you everyone for your participation in today's project steering committee meeting, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.